My next guest is one of your sitting Ward 2 councilmen and is also running for mayor of Norfolk. Shane, thanks for making time to be here today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No problem. It's a long time coming here.
Right.
I'm Zach Miller with co-host Vance Ryne.
Nice to meet you, Shane.
Nice to meet you, Vance.
And we are touching base with Shane Clausen today. We've been wanting to get a little background on everybody. So you grew up in Norfolk, from Norfolk originally.
Right.
Perfect. Go to Norfolk High or?
I went to Norfolk Catholic.
Norfolk Catholic?
You can use that against me, I guess.
No, it's okay.
I'm from Battle Creek, so
maybe he will.
That's even worse. Yeah.
He went to Catholic, so
he
likes it.
Yeah.
My wife went to Catholic, so I got to be a little nice. So you've been here all your life? Went away for college or anything? Or?
Oh, yeah. So I grew up here, and then when I went to college, I went to University of Nebraska at Kearney. And then after,
I'm an alum there too.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Hey, we got that going. But go Lopes, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
And then right after that, I moved to Omaha, and I worked for a company out of Omaha called Fuchs Machinery and sold capital equipment, CNC capital equipment like lathes and mills.
Oh, okay.
Did outside sales for them for about a year, and then my brother had a friend from Sidney, Nebraska. His dad was a real estate agent, and he talked us into moving out there and putting some houses up because Cabela's was booming.
Yeah.
And this is like early. It was like around 2000. So we moved out there and we started building houses out there, and we built quite a few out there. And 04 hits and Cabela's goes public, and we're me and Aaron like, yeah. My younger brother Chad moved out there too, and we kind of decided maybe we need to deviate and not have all our eggs in one basket, right? So I moved back to Kearney. Was going to try to get something started there, and it was just hard to work my way into the construction scene there. So I moved back to Norfolk and started working with my dad. My dad, he moved here in 75 and started Clausen Brothers Construction with his brother Tom, who worked with him for a while, and then kind of went on his own and did his own thing. And then my dad just kept the Clausen Brothers, and then I moved back, started going with him, and then my brother, Sidney, kind of, I wouldn't say went away after Cabela's closed, but it just really changed out there. So then Aaron's back here also, so we're both building here together. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
it's been around for a long time.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
kind of cool keeping that brother's name for two different generations too.
Definitely. Yep.
Have you, outside of the council, have you ever ran for any or served on any other boards or committees or public office?
Not public office, but when I moved to Sydney, I was the president of the chamber out there. The president of the Chamber of Commerce out there, and then actually was on the volunteer fire department out there. That was awesome. That was one of the funnest things I've ever done.
I'm sure.
It was a great experience. And then we moved back here. I got involved with the chamber here and got on the exec board. And then I actually ended up getting involved with the Home Builders Association because I was president of the Home Builders Association. That was kind of my pathway into city politics, really. I had, at the time, the state, or with federal codes and regulate whatever, our fire chief at the time, Shane Widener, we were talking about, are we going to do fire sprinklers in homes or whatnot? And I was kind of on the opposite side of that, and he was on the side obviously for that. And then we kind of battled back and forth, and then we had a kind of a nice debate one night, and a bunch of people were there. And afterwards, I was just going to ask, hey man, you should think about running for council. It's like, what? So
right. I
ran, and I obviously got elected, and that was in Ward 4. And then I was elected in Ward 4 again. And then in about 2017, I got in 2010. In 2017, I moved to Ward 2, and then the sitting councilman at that time asked me if I would run, and I said, hey, I'll do it again. So, and I ran, and then I got back on Ward 2.
So you've been on for quite a long time then.
I have been.
In different wards.
It's good or bad, I guess, depending on the way people want to look at that.
I think it's a good thing. I mean, Norfolk's not in a horrible spot, but
no, right. And actually, right now I'm the president of council. So
right, I knew that. Yeah. So what about our community is special to you?
Oh, well, see, obviously I grew up here, and I've raised my family here. I've got my wife; she's a teacher at Norfolk Public Schools, and I've got 4 kids that have grown up here. 2 are still here. 1 goes to Norfolk High, and 1 goes to Norfolk Catholic. So we got a little bit of a friendly rival.
Kind of choose.
Right, yeah, it worked out bad for the opportunities one wanted were at Norfolk Public for her. She's big into the Pink Panthers and dance and whatnot. Yep. So that's what she loves to do, and she's really good at it. And then my other daughter, she stayed there. Then I have 2 sons now that are both at Kearney, and both competing in track there. So it's kind of interesting.
They got a great track program.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. They have a good track program. So, but yeah, that's kind of. But anyway, getting back to the question, what's good about Norfolk, right? It's a tremendous community. My kids had a great time growing up here. Had a lot of opportunities. The YMCA, just the sports and the complex, and just the people here in general. It's just a good community, and you know, when you live somewhere and you get to be part of something, you kind of always feel like you should leave it better than you know, when you got here.
Yep.
And that's kind of the reasons why I've stuck around and got into city politics too, is I want to see Norfolk continue to grow and be a great place for other families to raise their kids and have the experience that I've had. So
that seems to be a running theme with quite a few of people we've talked to already. So you're already on the council. Right. Why run for mayor? Well,
you know, I really think I can offer some good things to the community with some of the experience I've had on council. I've got a unique perspective, I guess you'd say, because being on council for that long and then being the president of the council, I kind of understand that side of city government. And then I feel like that would really move well into being mayor, because by knowing the perspective they have, I think you can do some good things and make things work together and cooperate. And I do have an idea on that we can touch on later. But, and then, you know, being a businessman here in town, I've lived here and owned my own business, you know, those sort of things. And being part of the chamber for the time that I was, it wasn't, let's put it this way, it wasn't something I took lightly to run for mayor. And it's tough for me because it's, you know, I'm not a big, I don't know, the attention you get, like you got to go, you got to put your name up for roads or for signs, and you got to put yourself out there in front of people. And I'm not a big, you know, kind of a humble guy.
You'd rather get the work done.
You'd just get the work done.
Get the recognition.
Right. You just, that makes it tough because you got to be kind of one of those, you got to like, okay, I'm getting the spotlight. And that's probably the tough that you know, I'm the part I don't like the most, but
you gotta be comfortable with people being against you too.
Yeah, you do.
No matter what, you're going to have a certain amount of people that like you, a certain amount of people that don't like you. And once that goes from a small district to a bigger area, it's always going to change a little bit.
You know, the one thing about that too, when you people that dislike you, or I wouldn't say dislike you, just disagree with you, right? But one thing about that, years ago when I was first getting on city council, we had a deal with Woodland Park and the SID and sewer line and a lift station. And what was happening, the water was coming in. Their gallons from Woodland Park when they'd have a major rain event were more than what the pump could handle, and it was flooding some people and backing up in their base. I think Corey kind of touched that when he was there. So anyway, I was in that meeting. It was crazy. I mean, it was intense meeting. And after the meeting, Mayor Fuchman at the time, she kind of talked to me. She said, you know, Shane, one of the best things you can do, and this is great advice. She said, one of the best things you can do is put yourself in the other person's shoes and learn their side of the argument and really kind of try to get on their side of the argument. And then you can make a really good decision on what's moving forward. You know, I'm moving forward. So I've always kind of taken that advice. And so when I'm sitting with somebody that I'm disagreeing with, I try to like figure out exactly where they're coming from before I, you know, spout back or make a decision, and try to be as informed as I can. So
that's a good way of doing it. We talk about that all the time. Critical thinking and seeing both sides is a key to compromise. Well, not compromise, but you know, get into an agreement anyway.
It's a level of compromise. I mean, some people like to be in a room with where everybody agrees with them, right? But it's that some of the worst decisions come out of those. When you have people in a room that don't all disagree or all agree,
it's usually the wrong decision at that point.
Like, but if you have somebody that you're arguing, you're going back and forth, different opinions are coming out, and this person has a stance and you have a stance, and then you come up with a decision. And sometimes those are the best decisions made for a community, I feel.
You can refine it. You can refine the edges of a lot of stuff if you're doing some debate like that. So
it's not an echo chamber.
Exactly.
You know? So I think that's important.
So you said you had some ideas. You can interject those at any point in time. You kind of know the flow. So
it's up to you guys. I mean, we can start talking about them. So
okay.
Well, we would go. I guess we would start with the city's budget. Okay. So do you want me to kind of go through the city's budget on like a really easy explanation?
You want to wait till later on to do some budget stuff?
Do we have? I think we talk about it a little bit.
We talk about it a little bit once we get to maybe the police division. Do you want to go through the budget right before that?
I think this is not related.
Okay,
really.
Then let's do you then. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so our city budget basically is made, you know, there's two things about it. Okay, so the way it is put together is one, and the way that we are presented the budget is another way. So the city's budget is essentially made up of sales tax, property tax, and then you have different obligations or different financing coming in, and then you have the MPPD lease. And essentially 40% of that is the sales tax. And then 20% would be what you get on property tax. And of that 20%, when you pay your property tax, about 16% comes to the city from your property tax. Does that make sense?
Okay.
I'm saying a lot of numbers, man. I'm speaking too fast, but
no, you're good.
Okay, so 16% when you pay your bill, that comes to the city. That makes about 20% of the city's budget. And then you have the MPPD lease, and then besides that, you have about 23% come in from fees and services, permits and stuff like that. That makes up the rest of that. So you can see why sales tax and, it's kind of frustrating because you call those revenue streams, but they're more like a burden stream, right? Because they're taxes.
Right.
But I guess just to be fair, we'll just refer to it as revenue streams. So those come in. So that's why when we talk about development and retail sales, it's such a big important thing to our community because it's essentially, it helps push the burden on property tax. It's when you're having a lot of good things happen in your community. So that's what the city's budget is. When I say that, I'm talking about the administration budget, which is the police station, fire station, admin, parks and rec, engineering, library, streets and maintenance. That's what makes up that. And that's about in the order of what they cost too, the way I just list them. And so of that, about 80% of your budget goes to wages. I mean, it essentially is that. And then at the end of the year, they call it the end balance. They like to keep that around 16% of your overall budget. And that money's not being spent. It's like an emergency fund. And I guess you can say, well, there's an emergency fund out there mainly because, like what happened in Pender a few years ago, or, the tornado that went through there. The tornado. And if we had a major event like we did when the floods almost broke, that's where those funds would go. That's where you have those there. And there's a governing body that suggests that 16%. It's the GFOA. It's called the Governing Financial Officers Association or something like that. And they're the ones who suggest that. So it's not just a number they pull out of the air. So then you essentially have about 4% of the rest of your budget that goes to like some capital expenditures, what staff wants, and wants to do maybe some remodeling, or they want to kick some money at streets or whatnot. So it's not a lot. And then in that 4%, you have what is coming in for Keno funds, which is about $400,000, and council priority dollars coming in. So that's essentially the city's budget in a nutshell. And then when it's presented at a level 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what they do is in a level 1, you just take last year's budget, add some inflation, put it out there. Level 2, same thing, but they add in a COLA, which is like a cost of living expense.
So like a needs type thing?
Right. Cost of living, they'll add in for the employees. And then level 3 is a little bit more, and level 4 is like the rock star budget all staff wants, but I've never seen anybody vote on a level 4. And so essentially what you do is, like, say you approve a level 3, and the budget's really complicated. When I first got on city council,
we tried to read it last night.
Yeah, it's complicated. Trust me. The only way I got it is I had to sit down one night and just type in everything myself and start running on Excel just to get through it. So that's how I learned the budget. But it's complicated, and it throws people off. I would say it takes a couple years to feel comfortable on council when you're around that budget.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I want to simplify that a little bit. So when I feel like the tier budget, what it essentially does is you approve a budget from last year's spending, and then you add in some wants.
So it's never going to get less.
No.
The way it's set up.
Not really.
Never going to get less.
It's never going to get less, but you end up...
Because you said even one is going to have inflation involved.
Yeah, you got they figure, but they also balance it out with the net revenues coming in, what they're speculating on sales tax, and this is all coming from staff. It gets sent to. So when you look at that, and when you're talking about it, and say you approve a level 3, well, one of those budgets they might have money figured in to do a remodel, for instance, okay, and say there's $60,000 in that level 3 to do a remodel, and then while you're talking about it, they'll talk about level 4, and then it goes to we need $40,000 for this model outside the budget. So we end up arguing over like $40,000 on a $28 million budget. And then you approve it. And when you approve it, you think you just approved $40,000, but you actually approved $100,000 for that model because the 60 was in there, then plus the 40.
Right.
And so what I would like to do is I'd like to change that to a zero balance budget. Now this is real action. This isn't like me coming in here and telling you I'm going to lower property tax. I'm going to do this. This is actually stuff that could work. So you go to a zero balance budget, means you take the budget from each department. There's 19 departments. They come in with their budgets, and they've got to basically zero out from what they exactly spent. That means there's no extra payroll in there. You're going back to what just got spent that year, and then you build from that. Yeah. So what that'll do is you won't have any more tiers. There won't be tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, 4. It'll just be a single budget being presented, which will simplify it for the council. Essentially,
they can actually see the funds that are being presented.
You're just going to know exactly what was spent.
Right.
It's not going to be a speculation what's going to be spent.
Right.
You're still going to have discussions about the beginning balance of the emergency fund, but then all your capital expenditures are going to be discussed. So for one, it's going to be extremely transparent, which I think people want. I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
That's, I would agree.
Yeah. So what's your argument, or what would you say to, if you're always going up every time, what happens if somebody, they spent it, but they spent it because they had to spend it because they knew they'd lose it next year.
Right.
Does that happen? Are we seeing that happen? Do we know if that happens? And is there a way to combat that if it does happen?
You'd be able to see that in a zero balance budget. You'd see what the expenditures went on. But what they spent each bit on. Right.
So it wouldn't stop at the year it was implemented, but then the next year
you'd see what was. You know exactly what the line item was.
Yep.
Right.
You know that line item. And it wouldn't be something you didn't know about.
So it almost cuts it off right away.
Right.
Basically.
It's gonna help you find out where the fat is. Really would.
And that's kind of what I was getting at. Like that'd be a good way to, because I know how budgets work on different things. Not exactly here in Norfolk, but a lot of people. Well, this is my budget. We've got $5,000 a year's almost over. We better go buy something.
Right.
Otherwise, we ain't getting it next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you heard the term trimming the fat, basically, where there's might be like 25% where the fat could be trimmed on some of those budgets?
You don't know until the staff digs into it. This be whole new. I mean, this is a new. The budget's been done on the tier system since I think 1982.
Oh, okay.
So it's been this way for years.
It's been a while.
This is total drastic change, and I think it's going to be good because I think it's going to simplify for staff honestly, and it'll help them get the budgets out quicker to us because now. In like June, they sent a memo out to all of the department heads, and that department heads then have to have their budget ready by like July, and then they present to us. Well, then your main, like your administrator, your finance officer, and your one of your direct, they come in and they sit and meet and they go over and make sure the budgets work out, right? Yeah. And then they present it to council, and the council goes over. It's usually a 1 or 2 day meeting. You go through all the budgets. This year it was a long meeting. It was brutal, but anyway, you approve those budgets, and then they come back to you. So now you're in July, right? They come back to you in September. You have 2 readings in September to get through it. And then it's got to be to the county by September 30th. So it's rushed. In my opinion, it's rushed. So if I want to back that up, slow the process down, so you've got more time to have eyes on it and
to think about.
Yeah. So I think that would, I think those 2 things. Those are 2 of the things I'd like. That's what I was just talking about earlier. Those are the 2 things I'd like to see changed. So
those are some great. Those are good ideas. I mean. Right. We always talk about the less we could spend, the better. So.
Well, in my opinion, it's transparency.
That too.
And that's what, when people don't feel like it, things are transparent, and you got to build trust. I mean, right now the council's sitting in a situation where you had that $70 million bond initiative go out there. Nobody liked that thing. Mm-hmm. It was probably one of the worst things. Since I've been on council, it was probably the worst thing that ever got kicked out of city council. And I'll say I was.
You just the yes vote?
Well, here so it came to us kind of late. We had one meeting to vote on it, and if we turned it down, it wasn't going to be voted on. It was just going to get put back, and then nothing would have been on the ballot. So, in my opinion, at the time was, I wasn't happy. I was all put together, but I didn't want to be the one to stand in front of the voter, the citizen, to have an opportunity to vote on something. I always feel like if there is some time you can have an opportunity for the public to vote on it, 8 guys up there shouldn't be stopping your community from voting.
I agree with that.
So we've talked about it a bunch about how it on both of previous ones about how we bundled it all together.
Yeah.
And like maybe it shouldn't have been bundled together. Maybe certain things should have been out. And then we've had some people talk about, well, they do that and they've always done it that way because then it's a little bit for everybody. But I think at the times have changed enough to where people start seeing that and be like, we're getting it at the federal level. We're getting it at the state level. We don't need to be getting it here at our local level also. So, and that's where you go like the trust thing. I think a lot of it, people they're not trusting of their federal government. So when you aren't
that's where it starts.
You aren't being transparent here at a local level. We just, the benefit of the doubt is pretty much gone in all of government. Yeah. In my opinion, it seems that way and it's getting worse and worse. So if we go the other way and become more transparent, that's only better for everybody.
I think so too. Yeah, I agree.
What are some highlights that make Norfolk stand out?
Okay, well, Norfolk's got we're a community that has no real 4-lane here, and we've continued to grow and prosper without that. We're kind of a little island out in the middle of nowhere, and we wouldn't be as successful if we didn't have the communities around us. I think we have some awesome communities around us in the other counties, and I think as a whole, Northeast Nebraska kind of pulls together and does a good job. And I think it reflects on what Norfolk does. So I think that's kind of what, also, I think we've got a great business district downtown. I think we've got a lot of people in town that have business outside of downtown. I know downtown's getting tired of being called downtown. They get talked about all the time. I think it's driving them nuts, and it's driving the rest of the community nuts a little bit too. But
we got some feedback about that too. Don't worry.
Yeah. So I get it. It's just right now it's an area that's changed. And when I was growing up in Norfolk in the 90s, everything was out at the mall.
Yep.
And you had Walmart Walmart was out there, Shopco and Kmart, and the only thing downtown was Alco.
Yeah.
And so there was businesses down there, but it just wasn't what it was probably in the 50s and 70s,
right,
when everything kind of moved out to the west. So it's not that it's the top, people talk about it, but I think it's just because it's kind of exciting to see it and the city gets a lot of credit for that. But that most of that down there is people putting their neck on the line and doing it on their own. I mean, there might be some grants here and there and whatnot, or the city works with them on doing patios outdoors, which wasn't allowed before. We had to get that ordinance passed.
Yep.
So some of that stuff, but most of it's just getting out of their way.
I will say the city, you guys have done a good job of when somebody brings you a problem, as far as like, I'm going to use Fenders as an example. When they wanted their patio offset off the sidewalk, they had to come to you guys to be able to do that, and you guys approved it with certain stipulations, but you at least looked at it. And
that's something that's changed over the years. It wasn't that way 15, 20 years ago. It was safe. Our community was very much safety driven first, and then economic driven later. And that's kind of flipped the switch. Now we're more economic driven, and we're safety driven second. That makes sense. Is that kind of?
It does make sense. The way that was worded was kind of worries me a little bit. So can you explain, like, as far as safety of the public? Like,
I'm not trying to make light of that, but the staff back 10, 15. Very much safety driven. Like when we looked at a development or something, it was, this could happen or this could happen. And
gotcha. And lowest common denominator type stuff.
Right. And so it wasn't that they were trying to put up obstacles. They were just wanting to make sure everything was going to be up and up. And I shouldn't say up and up. It's more like, is this development meeting what we want to see?
Right.
And so what happened is you'd have developers come in and it'd be tough on them. They're like, man, I got to go back to my engineer and do this, this, and this, and whatnot. And I'm not going to speak poorly about anybody. It's just that was the mentality of that particular staff, and that's just the way it was. And things have kind of changed as of late. And so when I say economically driven first, I'm saying they're looking at what that can do for the community long term as a good thing for the community, and they still circle back to safety. But the two have kind of switched on what direction. If they're wondering, which one's the first one you think of, or which one's the second one you think of.
It's kind of moving more to putting the onus on personal responsibility.
Right.
Like you can't just expect everybody to be I know Mike Rowe talks about it a lot. He says safety third, but that's more like the reason he says that is you have to account for your own safety. If a company goes and says safety is our number one issue, then everybody thinks, well, somebody else is looking out for my safety.
Right.
You need to look out for your own safety and not expect everybody else to be protecting you from not using your head.
And there was a while that everybody was kind of sue happy too. So that probably scared some people.
There was a time, and this has kind of been thrown around a lot, but there was a time when I don't think a lot of people thought Norfolk was open for business. And now we like to say we're open for business. And
that's been running theme too.
Yeah, right. And that's kind of that's kind of the thought process behind what's being dictated towards staff right now is, man, if somebody's coming in with an idea, try to help them through that process. Don't just shut them down.
Right.
Help them through the process and then get out of their way and let them succeed.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Going back, can we touch on the budget just a little bit more?
Sure.
Do you have an idea of maybe what we're at for a deficit at the moment, or what we owe? I was trying to find that yesterday, and
so you're talking about our bonding debt, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's general assessment, general bonding, there's general bonds, and then there's assessment bonds, and there's hold on, I
think I had the right number. Then I must have had the right numbers yesterday. That's what it was on the bonds.
Right. Yeah.
We had been given some numbers at one point, and I wanted to make sure they were correct, and I didn't know if maybe off the top of your head you would know. So if you don't, it's not a big deal.
I got it.
Okay.
Let's go. So you got your revenue bonds, your special assessment bonds, and you got your general obligation bonds. And they're all different, how they're funded. Okay. So your revenue bonds, how those are essentially funded is through sewer and water rates. Right. So when they go out and they put new sewer lines in, or they do a lift station or one like that, something like that, that's going to be paid through the ratepayers rate. That's how that's paid. The special assessment bonds are when, like in your neighborhood, when they put the road in and they put the sewer and water in, they set up paving districts and sewer and water districts, and then the assessment against your lot paid for that. But the city at the time had to bond that, but it had you paying the developer selling the lots was paying those back. Now, general obligation bonds are paid a little differently. That's paid through taxes, like what the city brings in, or is paid through a chaff tax, which is a gasoline tax that the city gets from given to the city to, it's about $3.2 million is what it is that comes in the city. I may be wrong. 3.7 million comes to the city in chaff tax. And then the city puts a little more into it. So the budget's about 4.2 million. And that all has to go to roads and improvements, or pay bonds on roads and improvements. So when you look at that, there's like about, I think, from $43 million in bonded debt. 60% of that is the general obligation, and 13% of that would be the assessment bonds, and then the revenue bonds are around 27%.
That's the numbers that I found yesterday.
Right.
We have been given some numbers that were significantly higher than that, so I just didn't know.
Well, if
you add them all together,
there's some projections out there, but of the general assessment, general bonds, it's 20 million of that was Michigan Avenue, First Street, and Benjamin. So that's the way I look at it. It's kind of like if you were, you want to obviously keep your debt down, right? But the way they're paid, it's almost like your revenue bonds are kind of like what you're paying if you just look at your household, for instance, right? It's what I'm paying just to pay my bills. Paying that as my daily expenses. So I got money coming in, back out to pay it.
Yep.
And with your special assessment bond, it's like you bought a rental, and then the person in there is paying the rent. It's paying your debt because you're paying.
Right.
And then your general obligation, it would be, to me, is more like what you have. You bought a house or you bought a car and you've got debts and you're paying it off.
Okay.
So like in 2010, we had some pretty decent debt on those bonds. They started coming down, but what really kicked up the city's debt would have been the $20 million bond that went for Benjamin Avenue.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's a big part of it. And then your special assessment bonds, those aren't necessarily a bad thing, because that means people are building and developing, and they have something tied to it, so it's paying them back. But yeah,
and it brings in property taxes and other taxes too. So I get it. It was a very high number, and it was I guess it was concerning, but I never knew what the deficits were before. So
the deficits have peaked and come back down, You can almost, if you took and put a chart up and just look at like when you have a significant amount of development going on in your community, you're going to see an increase, because you're going to have to run sewer and water out there. You're going to set, and for these roads, they come and go. Like big projects happen, but they don't happen all the time.
Right.
Like the biggest project I saw when I first got on was 25th Street.
Right.
And then we've been talking about it in Michigan for years, but when Michigan going in, that added, to it. And then obviously Benjamin's been something that's been talking about for years. Benjamin was actually going to start a few years, like in 2013. They had it out there to go, and then Norfolk Avenue Bridge, East Norfolk Avenue, failed.
I remember hearing about that.
So when that started, that project, that kicked Benjamin down the road a ways.
Yep.
So I don't know, but that's kind of where the debt.
What do you feel about the facade changes at Benjamin Avenue? Do you think that all that was needed, or you?
No, I don't necessarily think you needed all that, but the burying the utilities lines, though, I think was probably a good thing, even for safety reasons. That one I was all about, was because I had a friend back there in the 90s. He went off Benjamin, hit a pole, and died.
Oh, geez.
So it's nice when you can bury utilities. I feel like just long term safety and whatnot. So I don't think that was a bad thing for Benjamin. Yeah, you maybe didn't need the stamped concrete or but some of those railings, I think they had to put up because they brought the elevation up, and then you had a step off on the sidewalk
to the parking lot.
Yeah, so I think they're obligated to do a rail there of some sort to protect people from taking a header right off the corner.
Right.
Wow.
So, okay. But that makes sense.
So like in that bond stuff isn't part of the budget, right? The budget's separate.
Right.
Correct. So
but your payment to the bonding, you've got to
comes out of the budget.
You've got to account for that. Correct. Yeah.
That's all.
But like I said, each bond has a different way of paying for it.
Yeah. Does that come out of like? Sorry.
You're good.
So like the ones that are the sewer and the water bonds. What were those ones called again?
Those are your revenue bonds.
The ones where they put in new lines and that's how they pay for it.
Well, it depends. Because if it's going into a development that a developer's doing, that's a special assessment bond.
Okay.
But a revenue bond is like when we put a lift station in or do an improvement to sewer, or
and it gets paid by the water rates and sewer
already
rates.
existing.
Right. Yeah. It's a benefit
Okay.
for the community. Then that those things are getting paid for. Well, they're all getting paid for essentially from the sewer and water, but it's different streams that coming in that help.
So is that part of that department's budget? Or that's part of your guys' budget?
Sewer, we have to approve the sewer and water budget, but they're not associated with the general fund budget. They're their own animal. They can't mix.
Yeah, but that's what I meant. But you were saying that's how you guys have to approve paying the bond. Do they have to worry about where that money's coming from? And do they have to account for that part of it into their specific budget?
I think that's what you're saying. So when they do a major increase or they do a new lift station, that's when you'll see those guys come in and say, we need a 2% or a 1% rate increase or something like that. That's what they're doing. They try to build up an account, like a balance in there to help fund those projects, but that's not always the case. If you have something fail, you got to take care of it.
Because that's something coming soon too, right? Because didn't water and sewer aren't they getting a raise here?
Yeah, there was a vote to increase the rates. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of that had to do with just like what we were talking about, just improved infrastructure, and they're doing a lot of work on infrastructure, a lot of projects there. So you got to pay for it somehow.
Right. Sorry for all the talk on that. I'm not very educated on that piece of it, so
right.
I just wanted to get you're very educated on it, so I just wanted to kind of get your take on it. Do you any more on that?
I guess my only other question.
Fascinating stuff. Huh?
It is kind of.
Does the budget run at a deficit, or are you guys never at a deficit?
No, it doesn't run that.
Okay.
A deficit, no.
Okay. That's all. That's where, because the bonding and the debt is where I worry about deficits running, which we do at other levels.
What could happen is if you create too much debt, you don't have a funding source to fund that debt, or you create too much debt and you've got to pay for it out of a different funding source. And then that could eliminate that funding source for paying for general maintenance.
Gotcha.
And when I talk about that, I thought that's the chaff that pays for our road improvements. If you bond too much against the chaff, then all of a sudden you're going to have a hard time paying.
Right.
You got nothing left.
Right.
So you got to be smart about how you spend those dollars. So
do you feel like we're in a good spot with all that right now? Or do you think it could be in a better spot?
I think what you're seeing right now is an incredible increase in development in Norfolk. And we saw a major increase in what had to be kicked out there. And then we saw some deferred maintenance come back and slap us in the butt.
Right.
On roads, it did.
Right.
And so some of these expenses had to be made, and it sucks. But eventually, I would hope that we were going to start paying that deficit down. That's the whole goal.
Right.
But I think if you go back, they have a nice little, I don't know where we would find it, but they did a presentation for us where they show the spiking and dropping. And historically what it's done and what it's been. But right now, I would say we're historically at a kind of like 2010 was at a high point, but a lot of it has to do with,
so you foresee it coming.
20 million of it has to do with Benjamin First Street and Michigan Avenue. So that made a huge, we don't take $20 million projects on very often, right? Obviously. So, but that made a huge difference. It did. And it you pile that on the fact that you'd have a $70 million bond initiative and you have 20 million, people think you're crazy.
Right. I do like to know now that I didn't realize how separated the funding of some of that was. So it's nice. I'm glad you explained that. And I'm sure the listeners are going to appreciate that as well.
Right.
We kind of got off the rails there. I apologize.
We did a little bit.
What do you feel that Norfolk could improve on?
Well, I mean, the number one thing that was given back is roads. They talk about roads that are rough here, but they're kind of rough everywhere if you live in the Midwest. But
winters are brutal.
Right. Right. I do think that we've got a little bit of a fraction here going on in the community, I feel like, and I think we need to work on that unity. And that's something I would really like to see us try to bring people to the table that maybe don't agree. That's what I was talking about earlier. You don't just always agree with somebody and you make some decisions just with an echo chamber. I'd like to see us where we're having those good conversations. This is a way to start, like right now.
Yep.
You have these good conversations, and then I feel like we need to get more community driven. I don't want to see council driven projects. I want to see community driven projects where it's coming from the community in, not the council out or the government out. And
that always makes it. That's good to want, even for you personally. I mean, that's selfishly, I don't mean that in a bad way, but if I was on the council, I would selfishly want that, because then I can say, hey, we're not pulling the wool over your eyes. We're not doing this. You guys brought this to us and we're trying to help you guys out. Yeah. And that makes it a lot better, because if it's going the other way, then people are like, well, they're just making decisions that we're not involved in. stuff like that.
Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
And we've talked, you got like, as a citizen, if you have a complaint or even have an idea, approach, communicate.
Yeah. That doesn't happen all the time. I don't think people know that they can. I had a friend of mine or an individual talk to me about the water in their house was turning brown. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I took a picture of it, sent it to me. I was like, geez. So I sent it to, staff, and they were out there in minutes, and they got it taken care of, or not minutes, but the next day they got it taken care of. But I never would have known about it.
Right.
And they didn't know where to go about it.
Right.
Had a gentleman call me the other day, and he had a street department kind of clipped his lawn a little bit when they were moving snow. And he sent me a text. I took and got out. And so there are avenues you can contact. All our phone numbers are on the.
We've been trying to tell people that everything, all your contact information is on the website.
Yeah, I got a call today from a call from a guy who's worried about a zoning change, and those are great phone calls. I encourage people to call me. I'll give out my number on this podcast because it's a good way to get a hold of us, and it's one-on-one. I almost prefer a phone call over an email or a text.
Right.
And then you kind of get content better. Is that okay? Where are we at with this? Is the guy hit my lawn, or is it like, hey, can you take, you know what I mean? You don't know.
It's hard to read somebody when they're just
certain things may be better in an email form because then you have a path or a trail.
And
or if they hit caps lock, and then you just think they're screaming.
No, I think
somebody that hasn't used a computer.
Yeah, right.
Oh, interesting. What qualities and values do you think make you an effective leader and decision maker?
Like I talked about earlier, I like to look at both sides of the issue before I make a decision. And if it's too complicated for me and it doesn't make sense, I'm not going to be probably pushing something. I'm very, very practical. When things seem practical to me, that's when I feel like it's a good idea. If something seems it's not practical and it seems like I'm probably not going to, that's just kind of the way I kind of look at things. And so I sometimes will not fall in certain categories when we're voting on. Because I automatically don't think it's practical. I think that's crazy. What are we thinking about doing here? So but as far as like, I'm very personable. You come talk to me. I'm in construction. I guess I'd say I'm a blue collar guy, average guy, and I think I can communicate but I think the message would be for me, essentially would be, we need, like I said, we need to keep Norfolk open for business. We need to let people live their life and have an opportunity to be successful, and we just not get in their way.
Right.
I've had people ask me, what's the best thing that you were part of being on city council? When you're doing like I wouldn't say people, but when you're doing like a debate or something like that. And that's always tough for me because I'm like, the best thing I did was just let this person succeed and not get in their way and see what like downtown Norfolk or, when somebody goes out and they want to do a new development and you're there to help them get through the process.
Right.
And
yeah.
That's what makes me happy when I see people go out and, live their life and do the best they can and not get in somebody's way.
We're very much less government, so
yeah.
We're okay with that.
It's essentially
I want less government. I want a very slow moving and ineffective government. That's my goal. That's the character Ron Swanson is my spirit animal. So, if anybody has an idea,
those are good characteristics. So I like that. What are your thoughts on the Johnson's Park project? With 65% of the project funded outside of the city, do you think that it was still worth doing?
Well, I think now you can say, yeah, it was, because that $32 million investment is going to go right behind that. And that's really with what's going to come in from the businesses going in there and the housing going in there and the investment they're going to make for the community. It's going to say, yeah, that was a good. And the thing about parks, you got to remember, nothing should happen in parks unless it's not donated. It's not it's not sort of like let's see. The three things that can help parks, you got to have grants, you have donations, and partnerships. You can't put it on the city and the city's budget to go out and we can do maintenance and take care of the parks, but when you want major improvements, that's where it's got to come from. So you talked about that 63%. So essentially, the city's investment in that, a little over $1 million came from Keno funds, and then 4.4 million came from CHAF. The chaff tax I was telling you about earlier. Of that, I think 2 million of that was bonded. The rest of it was paid outright. And then the rest of it was paid from ARPA funds. And the ARPA funds, came in when COVID happened, all that stuff. And that's what kind of covered the city's end of that. So just to dive into where it all came from, that's where it did come from. Was I a fan?
Let's talk before the $32 million. Like at the time it was being done, were you a fan of it?
Let's put it this way. the partnerships were there, and the people have been working so hard to get this thing moving. It was almost where you didn't want to stand in the way. The one thing I wasn't a fan of was the roundabout. I voted against that. I was not a big fan of the roundabout. I don't know. I mean, it was one of the, like you said, like I said earlier, they had the partnerships put together. They had the grants coming in. They had everything that they say they're going to do to get something going. And it's kind of like, well, do you get in the way of this, or do you get out of the way? And I tried to get in the way a little bit on the roundabout, but anyway, the ship had been sailing for a long time. Right. There have been people working on that for a long time. But and you look at it now. I mean, Alco's been sitting there empty since 2012. Yeah, I mean, I mean, I shouldn't say empty. It's leased. Yeah. There's things in there, but the Alco itself isn't there. Right. And now you have something that is going to locate there, and they're saying, Johnson Park was a big part of us coming in there. Right. So sometimes maybe your vision isn't always how it ends up, but sometimes you got to rely on other people and what they're thinking, and then. In this particular case, I may not have been on board 100%, but what's going to happen eventually probably was a good thing for the community.
Do you think that many apartments and townhouses is needed in that area?
It's crazy.
With the commercial buildings?
Yeah. So in the housing, they did this housing study in 2020. I was like, what is this all about? And they came back and said they needed to be like 800 units to 1,000 units in Norfolk.
Added
at that time. I thought they were crazy because I'm in construction, right?
Right.
And, they were right on the money. If you go through and look at the population base in 2020 was like 24.5, right around there. Mm-hmm. We're looking at about 26 in 2024.
Yep.
And they were saying that population in 27, 28 is going to be closer to 26. And so if you look at the units that have gone up in town, they're filling up. So the apartments they're putting up there are filling. I feel like housing would be going right now if interest rates weren't quite where they're at.
Yeah, I would agree.
Especially that the workforce housing. Because right now we're missing that workforce housing is not happening right now. Right. And a lot has to do with the 6.5% rates. Right. Because you're talking like, what's the medium income in Norfolk? We're looking at about $71,000 for a family of four. Is that sound about right?
I think so. We had it up there. You go to the census real fast. Can't remember does it show it on there?
I think it's about 70, 71, 69, 70%, right, 71,000. What's that get you? Okay. So that to me, that's a decent income. I mean, I'm not, but but I'm a blue collar guy too. So,
right.
So then you take that, you put 20% down on a house. If you don't have any equity coming out of an old house you're selling, and you're sitting at about 6.5% on your APR, your interest rate, and you've got your debt to income ratios, that only gets you about $250,000.
Yeah. And some of the homes this home skyrocketed too, along with the interest rates.
They did. They went from, I think what they say in Norfolk, the average house is, a little over 300, I think what they said. But on the national side of things, it's like 400,000.
Mm-hmm. I still thought average in Norfolk for over 300 was a lot.
It seems like it's a lot, but that's what they.
It says between 18 and 22, it was 192,
which is all median. It's definitely.
Yeah. But then you take 20 to 22 in that period time frame. We had 20% inflation.
Those are not. Yeah, I think that's now sitting at 300,000 or more.
If you put,
I think that's came down.
You're right.
The interest rates, interest rates went up, and the houses came down.
Yeah, I was reading about that today. The median house in the United States has actually come down from 23. That's actually a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Going back to the parks a little bit, do you think any other parks need looked at outside of Johnson's Park?
They're working on I get what you mean. Every neighborhood deserves to have a nice park there, right? If you put all your focus on one park, it's kind of like us talking about downtown,
right?
Then you're leaving other people out. So yeah, there's things they can do, and I think there's things they can do that just simple things, just by seeding and maybe put some fertilizer in there, just things that staff can do to help improve those. We've had was it Liberty Bell? Yeah, Liberty Bell Park. They've had a donation there, and that's the partnership side of things that you can do.
Is that where the pickleball's going?
Yeah, right. So you got the partnership and then the grant. Those are ways I think you can build your parks. So
what about Taha? Do you think that the ball fields piece of that yes vote was needed?
I do think that would have been a good thing for Norfolk. I don't know if the community was behind it though. I think the people that would utilize that are 100% behind it. It can do some good things. If it went through, it would help with your hotels. It would
bring in some good revenue.
It would bring in some good revenue. So it just depends on how you want to look at it. That's what I noticed with people. When you're in the hunt, like your kids are at that age, that's important to you. But as soon as your kids are not that age, it becomes like, well, do I need this burden? So it's a funny thing. Now, in order to have it happen, to get it to go, I think they have to do kind of like they did at Memorial Field. So that when they first tried to approve that sales tax increase, it didn't pass. And then they came back a second time. But when they came back a second time, there were boots on the ground, and it was all community driven.
Right.
And then the community came out in support of it.
Right.
I think it had like a 60-some% vote in favor.
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to do those projects out there, it can't just be like a few people come to the city and say, hey, we need this.
Right.
And then the city puts it out there. You got to get this people together and like, okay, we want this as a community. And then I think you can get some action going that way.
It's almost like an education piece too. Maybe people don't feel like they're educated on what even was in the yes vote too, type of thing.
Yeah. Right.
Or the sales tax piece the first time when it got voted down, maybe they just didn't understand how it was going to work.
I don't know if people were, I think there's a higher percentage of people that would have been in favor of Johnson Park or Tawazuka than they would have been for the Aquatic Center.
I would completely agree with you.
I would agree with that.
I think out of all the things, the Aquatic Center was probably the least on people's radar, or what they wanted.
And that, to me, I think there's tremendous opportunities in our community for that to be something that can be done outside the city. I don't think it needs to have, I don't know if the city needs to be the one doing
What do you think of the location for that? That's something I've talked about a few times.
The location for me was kind of tough. I wasn't sure what the parking was going to look like. And I think I got what they were trying to do is city land, and that means one less expense. And it was next to the high school, which made it easy for the kids that come over and have their swim meets and stuff. So I understand. But to me, it's like, I don't know if you're looking I'd be wanting to look like 10, 15, 20 years down the road. What do things look like? That's,
right.
So if you're looking, okay, this would be kind of my devil's advocate on it. And just kind of going back into the hotels thing, why wouldn't we get it somewhere nearby hotels?
Yeah.
Like if you're expecting to bring money in and make it an economic viability, let's make it, because I know from like the cattle show world and stuff, when people are going in and looking at facilities to use, they look at close places to stay.
Right.
Because families don't want to spend a whole day doing whatever they're doing and then have to drive 20 miles to go to a hotel.
Right.
I mean, you got screaming kids, you got it is what it is. And you want hotels in a close vicinity, meals in a close vicinity. Yeah, there's a couple right around there, but not very many.
Right.
I mean, I guess downtown, is not
Franklin's
too far. Franklin's is right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'd want to go somewhere outside, closer to hotels.
Well, I had people flat out tell me they would have been in favor of that if it had been a different location. Yeah.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Most of the kickback I got were residents that lived on, was it Elm right there?
Right.
Those are, we don't want to stare at we don't want our front porch to be staring at a big old building.
Right.
But anyway, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'll still ask it. While we are developing downtown, do you feel that the rest of the town is getting overlooked a little bit? No, we kind of touched on it, but
I feel like a lot of it is just, it's always talked about, right? And
it's a perception thing.
Yeah, because we're talking
so
about it so much that it makes people feel like maybe they're being overlooked. But I've had some people talk to me, but reach out to me and say, listen, man, my road is in bad shape and all you're doing is working on downtown. What about us? And so I get it. I mean, I see what they're talking about, and it makes sense to me that would be kind of a focus. But I feel like, I do construction and whatnot, but we're still building outside in other area. There's stuff going on. It's just that there's a lot of focus put on it.
Yeah. We've put a little focus on it too. And not all of our podcasts have been from people downtown, but we've gotten feedback saying, you guys are just interviewing people from downtown. I'm like, not really, but
right.
We've talked to other people, but
yeah. We kind of talked about this too, but can you speak on any future street plans? Many streets in Norfolk need attention. How will you, like I said, you'll be running for mayor. This is more of a city council question, but how will you fight for the needs of what people need done?
Well, we need to listen to what the people want to say to us and what they need done. And I think we need to do a better job of like bringing in forms. I've had somebody talking the other day said, I really don't know. And we've been trying. I mean, on social media, I think they try to put stuff out there, but I don't know if people know about it or not. I don't know if we're doing a good enough job getting our information out. I think that's something we have to work on all as a city. And
Norfolk's a tough city to get information out. I've noticed,
right?
Yeah. To get information out to the masses, it's difficult.
We used to do this thing called Coffee with the Council, and you could have some coffee and cookies after a city council meeting. It started out really good, but then it kind of died off. And then we tried to do one where like we would this is years ago, you'd go out and you'd have coffee like at Hy-Vee and let people talk, and it didn't really pan out. It didn't like kick up. But I think if you could I think citizens groups are great. I really do, like groups of citizens that you can put together that can actually, they know what's going on in their neighborhoods. They know what's going on in their development. They know what's going on and where they, and let them maybe get together, have some different people that you appoint or they step up and say, I'd love to be part of this. I think it's something we could do it's new. It'd be something outside the box, but at least that way you could maybe get some fresh information coming to besides what you're hearing every day. Cause I go to work every day, and I hear what people have to say, but I don't know what's going on. It's different places. So,
that is a good thought.
We kind of talked about that in a little bit, having ward meetings.
Ward meetings,
like
right.
A ward council meeting, basically.
But I never thought not having the person there. You could just have your own meeting, and then somebody could present that to the council member.
Or you could whatever worked. If you could, but a ward meeting, that's a terrific idea. You could get different people that would want to provide community input.
Yeah,
and are want to do this, and it might be a great avenue to find people to come and work the way and get on city council.
Yeah,
because that you do need people to want to do that, want to get on city council and do these.
That might be good for younger people too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And we kind of talked about it. Like Zach said, we want everybody to be opposed. No offense to anybody. Everybody should have somebody running against them.
Right.
An unopposed candidate, you're not gaining, in my opinion, you're not really challenging any ideas. Like whether they're good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's just nice to have somebody challenged.
I feel like it kind of looks like people care.
Yeah.
I like that people care and they want to run and they want to be part of this. And that to me is a great thing.
This is our biggest race in a while, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everything.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
For a long time, if nobody ran against you, it wasn't common.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it is good. It is good to see people come on, because that means people care and they want to see good things happen in the
I
community.
would agree. What are your thoughts on tax increment financing?
Do you guys want to take a break before we go?
I was going to say we should probably take a break. Let's take a quick pause and then we'll get into that. All right, we are back. I had to take another, Shane knew what I had to do. Hour in, got to go to the bathroom.
Right.
All right.
I didn't want to lose it with we talked about that.
Right. Tax increment financing. You're pretty versed in this from what you and I talked on the phone.
Right.
But talk however we'll let you talk on it as much as you want.
There's different types of TIF. There's we've got you have tax increment financing. You have micro TIF. That's one of them. And then you've got extreme TIF too.
Okay, so there is extreme TIF.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. So what would be
extreme TIF? Extreme TIF would allow you to put, instead of a 15-year bond, you go 20-year.
Okay.
So they can extend the life of that bond, so they can recoup some more of their investment.
Is that going on in town?
That is what they asked for the development or they were going to ask for the development that just got blighted substandard for the old Alco.
Okay. So I want to clarify for the listeners, Corey was correct. It wasn't micro TIF, it was the extreme TIF.
Right.
I didn't know there was extreme TIF.
Micro TIF, I don't know if it's been used in Norfolk. It might, but really? I don't know of one. They don't have to get an attorney for that, but it's a lot smaller investment. Like it,
$1.5 million or something.
Hey, there you go. Yeah. 350 on a single family residence. Then 10 million up to a national register.
And it's a quicker process, right?
It's a lot quicker process. Yeah. But it's kind of difficult because you got to have the area blighted substandard. And if you're talking about residential, there's just not a lot of residential in blighted substandard.
Right.
Most of it's industrial track or just tracks that were downtown, So there's not that many structures that could even be. That's why I don't think I don't know if it ever get used unless there's some things changed in town.
The only way I could see it being used, going on that historic places side.
Yeah, that'd be downtown or something. Yeah, that'd be where. Yep, definitely.
It wasn't used for that now, though, was it? For any of that?
So what do you want? Like when you ask me about TIF, you want to know what is TIF?
We kind of have an idea of what it is. I want your thoughts.
Or you just want to explain what TIF is to the listeners, maybe? Right.
We can if you want to, since you got a pretty good.
Yeah. So basically, what you're doing with tax increment finance is, say a project is $1 million. The project itself right now is appraised for $1 million. That's the assessed value, and that's what it's paying taxes on. So a developer comes in, he sees this project needs some work to get back to, to build then they build the improvements. So the improvements they put on that, when that goes in, so the value of that went from, say, 1 million to 1.8 million. They take that
800,000.
No, So, or no, I'm sorry. So if we went from like a $1 million, that's what the land was, and you do say like a $13 million development on top of it. Okay, that money, the improvements on that lot, are what they used to pay that TIF bond. So if a developer comes in and they're looking at a project, they're going, okay, I'm eligible for like a $450,000 bond by what the taxes of the improvements that I pay what the improvements will assess at when I'm done. So if the taxes change quite a bit on a $1 million project to a $14 million project, that difference is what goes back to pay the TIF bond. Does that make sense? So if I go finance a TIF bond, most developers, either they finance it themselves or they have the bank finance it. Mm-hmm. So the taxes that were always on that property still go out. You still pay your taxes. Yep. Like you still have to pay your taxes. But when they get it, what they do is they take the taxes that have always been taxed on that property, and that gets spread out amongst county, schools, city. But the improvement that is assessed on that lot now is how they estimate the value of the bond. It's like you got to work backwards on a payment. Does that make sense? So
yeah.
And I'm sorry if I'm not explaining this.
No, you're explaining it fine. It's a tough one to think that fast on.
So they get the bond, the loan, and then every year that they pay the taxes, X amount of tax, then taxes that land always garnered goes out. Normal never changes, but the increase in taxes then goes back to pay that loan, bond loan.
Yeah, right. And sometimes it's a loan at the bank, but the difference is your bank not necessarily looks at that as a debt. It almost becomes an asset because it's being paid by taxes. So it's a guaranteed tax.
Right.
Somebody's going to pay that.
Right.
And so the risk a developer has is when they apply for TIF bonding, they get TIF bonding, they put their development in, and then they don't start their project.
Right.
Because then their taxes are evaluated at that end value.
Yeah.
So they have to pay that regardless. Now it's in most TIF bonds, if you just want to use quick math, are about 10% of the overall project. I had $1 million project, about $100,000 TIF bond. So for me, when we moved out to Sydney, we went out there and just crazy. We bought a lot, built a house, bought 2 lots, built 2 houses. And then we bought a chunk of land, and we were going to do workforce housing. And the only way we could get it to happen is we had to apply for TIF to get our lot cost down, because we had to be less than $117,000. This is back in 2000.
Right.
But in order for those houses to qualify for people to get down payment assistance, it had to be a certain dollar amount. And so we went and applied for TIF with the city, and oh man, they had like an extra security. They had an extra police officer there. I'm 24 years old. I'm in this meeting, and there are people ready just to come pounce on us over this, because it was just like, God, it's tax deferment. And I get that argument. But so we ended up doing 30 homes, and that was, I'm not level of stress, because I knew if we didn't get these 30 homes done in 2 years, you were going to be paying taxes on them. You had to make that payment. So we had 2 years to get these 30 homes. We had to get 15 homes done each year, and it's out in City, Nebraska, which the workforce isn't quite. We got through it because they weren't very big homes, and then we ended up doing another project out there with a TIF bond on about 15 homes. So essentially we did about 45 to 48 homes. But those bonds, now this is what I'm getting at. When we went to the bank looked at those bonds. They held the bonds. We didn't hold them. But they looked at it as like not debt for us. They almost was like so it allowed us to go out and borrow to build more homes. We ended up building like 150 homes. But we TIF'd 48 of them. But then it allowed us to get our costs down to a point where our lots were only like 10,000 a piece.
As we've talked about it, it's clicking with me now. So we can my question is, when it comes to blighting a certain area, some of these high value property areas that were maybe have been blighted in the past or right now, why blight a high value property area? Well,
just like we were talking earlier with we were kind of looking at the medium price of homes. It's gotten to the point where it's like out kicking its coverage. The price of the home is getting to a point where the incomes are not keeping up, and so even your upper end developers are like, I can't do this affordable anymore. I don't have anybody in this. So when you were appealing to like 4 or 5% of the demographic could buy your houses, like in now it's getting less than that. And so like, I know like, Metalman's Lake development, he had so much upfront cost on that development. I don't know if I talk about it. Yeah, I'm sure Paul wouldn't care, but he had so much upfront cost. His initial lot cost would have been so expensive, but by getting the TIF bonds, it allowed him to spread those costs out over all the lots. And so he wouldn't have been able to sell a lot if he would, because he had to run a loop in there. I think he had it was crazy amount of money, but they wanted to loop the water from one end to the other. Oh, so he had to run a loop, and I don't remember what that cost him, but it was really expensive. And the city was basically saying, you got to do this. We don't want water to come to a dead end,
right?
And go bleed lines all the time. So they ran a loop and whatnot. But so that was his reasoning for TIF. I think what I'm hearing though in the community is they want some parameters, like some sort of like guideline on how this. And I think if we could do that, and again, that's that citizen group thing I was talking about. If we could get a group of people in town that some of the people that show up at things and we see a lot of, or even some of your developers, like the way I would do it is I'd get like 4 or 5 developers come and talk. And then I get 4 or 5 residents to come and talk and have them come up with an idea or what parameters and guidelines we need for moving forward with TIF. I think if we could, because I think the blight and substandard part is what's getting at people.
Yeah.
But if you could hear like some of the developers talk about it, what they're running up against now with the inflation, we had 25% inflation in like 2.5 years. And so it's just changed the way things are going when it comes to housing. And TIF is different on residential housing, because you're selling those.
Right.
So as soon as they sell, guess who's paying the taxes now? It's a new homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
Now in a commercial development, when you're not selling it, you're always going to pay those taxes. But even though it's coming back to finance your TIF bond, I don't know. Which
then, I mean, just listening to that on the residential side seems like we're helping a developer and not really helping the overall homeowner.
Well, you are helping the homeowner if the developer prices the home.
Are they doing that?
Reflects I don't know if you've got control over that.
That's what maybe is hard to see, that there's no check and balance. What's to say that not saying all developers are this way, but there is maybe there is some developer that's going to come and use this, make a whole bunch of money, and then it's not their problem because they've sold the house.
Well, the money they stand to make is the interest on the bond. If you had the bond, so it's interest on the bond, that's going to take 20 years to pay out, or 15 years to pay out. So it'd be a long-term investment. Now, I was talking to a developer who does affordable housing, and he was telling me what they do is they build the house at cost, and then the TIF bond is the interest on the TIF bond is what their profit is. I guess it's not really the profit because it's how they're able to build at cost, but they have to get the housing down to a certain, because they're setting the max amount. Or like the workforce housing TIF. Mm-hmm. We didn't talk about that. I don't even know if that's on there.
It's just those. On the city website, it's just those 2.
They only show the 2 on this. But
so workforce housing TIF, I think it's like up to $300,000 value of a home, and then so in order to get that, they've got to knock their pricing down. So there is some checks and balances. Saying you can only use this. It's only TIFable for this amount. But no, you're right. You don't really know what can happen, but I guess that's capitalism. Huh? I mean.
And really on the other side, when it comes to commercial, you're looking at rebuilding the structure. Like let's say the Alco building, they're going to put commercial retail in there,
right?
Restaurants. That's going to bring in taxes that weren't previously going to be there,
right?
Even though we're not paying,
But the other side of the argument that's capitalism is capitalism is somebody's going to succeed and somebody's going to fail.
Right.
So you know what I mean? Like
100%.
That's where I'm at on it. Like I don't know that I'm exactly.
Here's when I like TIF. I like TIF when I know it's going to make a house affordable. It's going to benefit that end user, and not right. And the developers maybe using that to help benefit that end user.
Yeah,
that's a good thing for your community. Because every family that comes to your community, and I don't know the exact figure, but when they move here, they're also buying goods. They're paying for service. I mean, they're becoming part of your community. Their kids are going to your schools. Now, on the school side of things, that's where the argument gets to be. Hey, listen. Especially when you're talking high density, you're bringing a bunch of families in, and now we aren't recouping anything on the property taxes. So schools,
so they don't on the TIF, the schools lose out on the property tax.
They lose out on the improvements.
Yeah,
first
just until the bond is gone.
Yeah, right.
And that's 15 to 20 years.
15 right now, 15. That's your extreme, but 15. But typically TIF bonds pay off quicker because what they do is they don't want to get the developer in a bind, so they'll undervalue the improvement. So if I come in and say, hey, I'm going to do $1 million here, they'll say, no, we're going to set the tip bond at 800,000. So they'll use like that 80% number. Yeah. And by doing that, so it's undervalued. But then when the actual tax and assessments come in, so the tip bonds.
So they gain that extra 20% on the 200,000 on the taxes.
Yeah. And then it pays off quicker. So like when we did the two tip bonds that I was involved in, I think one paid off like in 9 years and one might've paid off in like 13 or something like that.
What were those TIF bonds for? The ones you were involved in?
We used to pay for infrastructure.
Okay.
We paid for infrastructure on both.
So obviously it's getting used at Alco. So $32 million improvement. Well, I just, like him, I'm against it when we don't know what's going on. Well, I think it's a good thing.
If you look at that one and you look at the improvements that it's bringing in and what they suggested, what they're going to do for retail sales. So essentially the city would lose out on about 400, or not the city. Yeah. When I say essentially the real estate tax entities, which would be your Madison County gets more than we do for property taxes. And then your school and then the city and the college, right?
Which it's like 70% goes to education in some roundabout way. Right. And that's give or take, and some school districts are much higher, but.
So when I looked at it, it was, these numbers may not be right, but this is what I kind of remember in my head for the meeting. It was like about a $420,000 tax, like taxes that was going to go to finance their bond. And that was not going back to the Madison County. But then what they projected for retail sales was like 480 grand, something like that coming in. And that was what they were saying was coming into that'd be the city's percentage of that. So then when I say the four, I'm sorry, I go back and I figured that 420 off the percent that came to the city. That was just what, so it essentially became a wash for the city on tax dollars coming in and tax dollars. And I thought, wow, you can get a $32 million project here on essentially a wash for the citizens that you get. And you're doing.
And that's if they fill it with retail space though. Have they already sold the retail space, or do they
what they projected on retail? And then what they were saying in the meeting, the city, I think they even made a statement like that might be kind of light because they don't know for sure how many stores they're going to have. They're going to really push retail or whatnot. But what I understand is they want to do more like boutiques and places like if you had a location in town, you might want to go there and locate there as a smaller location.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way I understood it.
Have we talked about some of the displacement of the businesses that are there because of that at all?
Yeah, right. People are trying to find places now. Yeah, okay. I've talked to some of them.
Have they been invited back when it's rebuilt as a retail space, like the laundromat?
You know, they hired somebody to help fund that or talk to those people and get to find those people new locations. I'm guessing they're probably pretty much
them as in the developers.
Yeah, when you take over property like that has lease signs to it, you can't just kick them out.
Right.
You got to put them someplace with a new lease, and you got to figure something out for them.
Okay.
So I don't think it'll end well. I mean, it's gonna be if I was down there and it'd be stressful, right?
Right.
But I think in the long run, it's going to be okay for everyone.
Right. Okay. I agree. Is that all you wanted to get out on TIF?
So I guess, I mean, the big thing though, I think what I'm hearing from the public, and that's what I'm listening and you were saying back to me, is like kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is what parameters do we need to set on TIF? Mm-hmm. I really think we need to have that discussion because if we don't, what happens is developers come here and they come in, or even local guys, they come, well, I could do this and I can do that. And then they find out down the road after they've done some investment with hiring an attorney and the staff doesn't know because the staff's thinking, well, we can do this. So if you do find what parameters you want to set, what's going to make, it's not going to make everybody happy, but at least you're working together to try to figure out a solution to make the community somewhat, happy with what this, because when you think about TIF, what other economic development tool does the city have? We used to have LB 840. You guys ever heard of that?
I've heard the name. I don't know exactly what it is though.
So LB 840 was a voted in tax increase.
You click on that?
Oh yeah, you can do it right there. Yeah.
The LB8, the Economic Development Plan, LB 840 on the left side there. Up.
There. Right there.
I don't know if it really even tells you much about it, but I can just touch on it for you. Essentially what it went to do, it paid for the gas line that came in where the pipe plant was going to come in.
Okay.
That's where those funds went. So it didn't go to a bad place, but it did get us an extra gas line in our community, which was important and needed it, if that any plant came in. So, but LB 840, you could go out and you could, if you're going to have so many employees, you would qualify for so many dollars. And the companies that actually used it, they're like, man, this was not worth the hassle. We've been filling out the application. Right? Yeah. Now you're auditing me. You're looking at my butt. This isn't even what I wanted to do. So it wasn't it was initially, I think, but that was it. So then you got that. And then what else do you have? I don't know. So
I guess the devil's advocate would be you create at some point you could probably cut back on it, is maybe an argument to say like, yeah, we've created a big enough thing that we're bringing people in. People want to be a part of this. Maybe we have to stop giving stuff away and just expect that everything we've built up and built up and built up will be a big enough draw in itself to keep this ball rolling. Right. I mean, I don't know if that's the answer, but
yeah. So with TIF though, you have a but-for clause. The but-for clause says you can't do this project but for TIF, and you sign that, and that's binding. So if somebody came in and they, were blowing smoke, basically, for lack of a better term, and try to do this, and that's how they handle their TIF, they can get financial issue, or they can have legal issues over the deal. So that the but for is the main key, where they'll come in and say, I can't do this but for TIF, and then they'll go through their explanation of why, and so yeah, I get it. I don't.
And I guess it goes back to transparency too.
I didn't mean that they were going to use it the wrong way.
Right.
I just meant like when you ask for an economic development tool, maybe it could just be a snowball effect where it just, at some point we just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and people want to be here.
And that might be the case, and that would be a great situation to be in.
That was my question. Like eventually we find a stopping point.
No, I get it. I think someday you probably could. It just. It's all going to boil down to what the prices of housing is doing in the future. If that's going to continue to climb like it did, if the rents are where they're at, and these guys can't pencil out in Norfolk to do things. I mean, back in like 10, 11, I had a chance to. I don't know. We were applying for a grant out in Sydney called neighborhood grant or something like that. And anyway, Columbus wanted to do it too. I was kind of involved with one in Sydney, so I got invited to some meetings in Columbus to talk to about this stuff. And while I was out there, there were some guys who flew in, big developers they flew them in to Columbus to see what is going on. Why can't we why aren't people building apartments in town? And they just kind of talked about, well, here's what you have to have per apartment. And it was a really easy form of math. He's like, if it costs $60,000 a unit, you got to have $600 to break even. So you need 8. You go, your rents in Columbus this is a few years ago. Your rents are at like $650. It doesn't make sense for us to be here. And so, that was just kind of when they were talking to us about development, I took that with me, and I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. So when you come back to Norfolk, you're like, nothing's being done. So it's unfortunate. I think sometimes the rents now in Norfolk are at a point where it makes it really tough for people.
Their price of an apartment rent right now is damn near the price of a mortgage on a house.
Right. So, but I don't know where they're putting people are moving to them.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. Part of me doesn't know how they're doing it, but somehow they're figuring it out.
I don't know what the answer is there. It's unfortunate where housing is going. It's a crisis, and it's just going to get worse.
It is.
And TIF's not going to solve it.
No. I do like the way you've explained it. I think the listeners are going to enjoy that. I have even after the first conversation, sometimes it takes a couple conversations for me to understand everything.
That's the best I've heard it explained to me. And,
so I think I did a great job on that.
Well, thanks. I've had to do this for a while.
Yeah.
And you get beat up a lot when you're talking to people about it. So it just, I don't know. It's not perfect. I don't think anything's perfect, but I don't know. We've got some stuff coming on the horizon when it comes to housing and apartments, and like you said, what people are paying and wages, where wages are going. I mean, what do you do? I don't know. It's scary. I think about my kids sometimes. I'm like,
I know.
How are you guys going to function? Are we all going to live in tiny houses?
That's what it's coming down to.
We brag about it like, oh yeah, we've opened up this door so we can do tiny houses.
They're just all living under the same household forever.
Right.
One big happy family.
I do think though, in the future, I think you're going to see a lot more developments look more like developments from like the, like post-war development or even like the early 1900s
the cookie cutter stuff. Like that's
where
everything's the same.
The lots are like 50 by 150.
Yeah.
And then your streets, it's lot. And then that way you don't have as much street and infrastructure and they become more like a bungalow type style house. I don't know. I don't know how else to do it except for getting the infrastructure costs down and then figuring out a plan to build a house that's not quite, as expensive as what we're doing now. But
you guys just passed some tiny home stuff, didn't you?
We did, yeah, and that was part of the reason. Was like, okay, maybe this is that. I think if the more, maybe solutions you try to find and you can offer, maybe you can help curve it. I don't think it's going to stop it, but it might be something. I mean, heck, if I was single and there was a time, I wouldn't think anything of it. I'd be like, this is great. I can park. I don't need to be at my house all the time. If it's in a cool area of town and I can go hang out there, and I don't know. But I mean, like for a family, it doesn't work.
No. No, I need places to get away.
Right. Right. You go hide down here in your
You go
studio.
hide down here, yeah. Now that it's finally done, yeah,
Right.
It's nice to just come down here.
Yeah.
Any more on TIF? I want to make sure you
if you guys are comfortable with what I talked about,
am.
I think we're good. I'm sure the listeners probably want to move on.
No, that's all right. I think they're going to find it interesting because I don't think anybody has really explained it that well coming from the city council, and I think it's good.
Oh, thanks.
What are your thoughts on the Epic option? If
okay, so that is something I really need to educate myself on.
We do too, so don't feel bad.
I have reached out to some of the guys I know some of the guys that like have the stickers on their truck or the stuff in their lawn, and I just haven't had a chance to really dive in and learn about it. I want to. I just don't. I'm trying to. I've heard about it from the city's end, but I haven't heard anything about it from what does this all mean and how's it all work out?
Right.
But so I don't think I'm educated enough on it. I need to get up to date on it, and I will.
Do you want to give your take on
I kind of gotten into it all the time. I don't know that it's the exact answer, but I feel like we have to figure out a way to decrease property taxes. Our number one issue in the state.
Where does Nebraska rank? It's like
it's not low.
It's way up there.
It's very high.
Yeah, right.
And I'm in the Battle Creek School District, and it's the highest school district in the state of Nebraska.
Right.
So now I know that doesn't really have anything to do with Norfolk, but and then after I've talked about this, I realized that this one doesn't even include groceries.
So he's been talking about groceries.
I think groceries is the number. I think that'd be a real quick way, fast way to create a more fair, even playing field.
Don't they do that in South Dakota?
Yes.
Yes.
And there's no income tax.
Right.
And don't
they also have mineral rights out there? Doesn't that help a lot of the mining they do out there? Yeah. So we don't have that here.
Yep. We don't have that. But this is starting with getting rid of property taxes, income tax, inheritance tax, and corporate taxes, and all of that. In a way, I mean, if you're eliminating income taxes, people have more money to spend more money,
right? And
you can catch that on the sale tax end. Corporate taxes creates higher wages. More increase in infrastructure for the companies. I mean, that's a way of bringing business into a state.
Right.
That's the way I look at it. And like I said, I don't know that this is exactly the best, but it's a start.
Oh, look at there, 43rd.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's a start to, in my opinion, to start the conversation. Whether it's right or not, I don't really know. It's probably not going to pass, but it's a start. Get the conversation started. Let's even out the playing field a little bit.
We didn't realize till like just yesterday that there was no grocery on there, and we think that's his biggest piece is to put the groceries on there. So
I look at it as food. Everybody buys food. Yep. Everybody. Like we will pay taxes on. This is one of my arguments. We'll pay tax on soft drinks, fountain drinks, whatever. But we don't pay tax on bread at a grocery store.
Yeah.
But fountain pop is not a prepared food, right?
Yeah.
We don't pay tax on bottled pop, but we pay tax on fountain pop.
Yeah.
And it's just something I don't understand why we can't find a way to make that a little even.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about earlier, you get some people in a room, you got these guys that want this to happen, you got people over here that don't agree. If you maybe a good solution can come about just by pushing this out there, even if
that's kind of why I like the idea of it, and I want to keep talking about it. So maybe the conversation can get started, and we can dispense with like, oh well, this person's got to pay more because they have more, or this guy's got to pay for me because he's the one that's got all this stuff.
Need to get myself educated on what it's all about.
Yeah, we don't got to talk about it too long. We just been bringing it up with everybody, so I don't blame you. We're not that educated on it either. Obviously, we didn't know the grocery thing till yesterday, I think. But
it was the Monday night.
Was it Monday night?
Or last week.
I guess the ultimate for me though is whatever happens, whatever have it passed or done, it's just going to change the way cities have to do things.
Right.
Yep.
And if you're just going to adapt,
right.
If this is what's going to change this for you, then you adapt to it. And
right.
You can adapt and overcome. Right. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
If you can't keep an open mind about things and you're afraid of change, that's not a good way to look at things either.
Correct.
Right. Completely agree.
So yeah. I mean, if the voters in Nebraska want this to happen, then the city's going to have to adapt to it.
It's going to have to change. They're going to have to tweak it a little bit before I'm on board. But that's enough about that. How do you feel about the addition to the police station, adding 8,000 square feet?
Have you guys had a chance to look at any of this police station or anything?
We haven't. We've heard
just by what people have been told.
It's kind of deceiving because you see the outside of it and you're kind of like, the building looks pretty good. It was built in 89 or 7, something like that. And you're like, well, it's only 40 years old. Who pre-planned a building only the last 40 years, right? So that's what for me, where I was like, what is going on? But then you get a chance to kind of see what they're going through and see how it's really not efficient. They need the upgrade, and Chief Don Miller has been working on this for a while, and so actually there is a committee right now working on a plan. I've got my own thoughts on what it needs to look like when it comes back to us. I think it needs, obviously we've talked about transparency. I'd like to see the city have more skin in the game than just going taxes on, a sales tax increase. And it would be nice to see us get out of it as quick as we can and sunset it as fast as we can. So whatever they come back with, they'll have it. And it's good that we have a group of people out there putting this together to help with. And it's not just, go out and pick out A, B, and C. It's, you got like attorneys and they have it's a legit group.
Search committee, basically.
Right. Yeah.
That's good. It's good to hear. I mean, I think they need it. It was evidence is piling up. They had the cyclists had their bikes in the stairwell.
Right. Yeah.
Difficult.
They had when they have juveniles there, they sleep in a hallway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not
difficult.
Ideal. But
we did talk about that's another one when we talk about that yes vote. If that would have been on its own, odds are that probably would have passed on its own.
I think that passes 100% on its own.
I don't think that would ever not pass.
No.
It's crazy.
And that's kind of why are we throwing it together? Just cut it out. I get it. I'm just saying.
It wasn't. It was. You got to be able to look back at things and go, that was a bad idea. Yeah.
That's the only way you learn, right?
Just come on. What were you thinking? And I could look back at some of the stuff I've done before in my just personal life. Like, what were you thinking?
Yeah. Best way to learn, though.
You got to learn. You got to move on and learn from stuff. And I think this is one of those things you learn, right?
Yep. Agreed. Another learning.
So back to that real quick. So what they're looking for now, do you think it is it even getting to the point that or is it just a Band-Aid?
Well, no, they've really worked hard at like the design.
This is where they'll need to be. This will get them to their.
I don't know if it's where they're going to be. They're going to. I don't know if this is going to be what they're thinking. I think they're like 10.5 right now for it, but I don't know if that's even going to cover what they're. Because like I said earlier, we've had about 20% inflation, and since this came out, we voted on it.
Yeah. But that's my question. If don't do something if you're just going to do it,
right?
Let's do it the right way. Is my question on if that's what the mindset they're going into it with. Or are they just saying, this is probably the best we can do, so this is all we're going to do for now?
Well, eventually you just have to trust what your staff's telling you. Are telling, and they're telling us that this is what they want, what they need.
Okay.
So, at that point in time, you're like, okay, man, I got to take your word for it. So, so that's kind of what the way I look at it is if we're working together on something, you say, and this is what you do, right? You guys are run this podcast, and I come in here and say, I mean, you need to do this or this. This is not. So it's you got to trust somebody and say, listen, okay, you're telling me this is right. Yep, I believe you.
Right. No, I get it. I just want to know that they're in the mindset that we're looking long term,
looking for the future.
Let's make sure that we're getting.
So we don't run into 20 years. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Right? I mean, what's a building up that's only
going to last me 40
years, and then you grow out of it, and it falls apart.
Right. That's funny.
I'm like, are you hoping it's the same architectural firm putting this together? Is it? But I probably shouldn't ask that because it probably is. But they're, but I mean, they put a lot of thought into it. Yeah, and they're really working hard on it.
That's good.
That's good.
It's good to see there's a committee on it too. Does that happen a lot?
No, not at all. This is kind of new, and I think it's terrific. I really do. Cause
I do too.
I think anytime you can get more influence from people in the community, the better.
Yep.
It just things run better. You've got a more diverse more diverse ideas coming in, because like you can literally get yourself thinking that this is what the community wants when you're only with certain people,
right?
And you're only talking to, you know. So when you run, you know, like we all have like different groups we run with, you know, and you maybe have a group of friends you run with when your kids are playing basketball, or you got a group of friends you're running with when you're after work, and everybody's got different opinions on things. And if you can't get out there and be amongst you know, like a big source of the population, or have a decent amount of people providing feedback to you, I don't think there's anything better you can do than have a group like that.
Yep. Right. I agree. Kind of going into the whole oversight deal, can you give us some thoughts into how the oversight of the North Fork Transit is being handled, or how do you think it should be handled?
Okay. So right now they've got some good people in place.
That's what we've heard.
Yeah. They've got some financial people in there that's what they do.
Yep.
And they're looking over it. And I think it's in a good hands right now. I don't know. Do you guys know? We went out and bought a bus. Me and my brother did. We were hauling people around when it closed.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. And what's crazy about it is, you know, it costs that much to do. I mean, I went out when I got some donations from some people. I mean, I really worked hard to get this thing going, and we did it for a couple months. We had a full-time guy driving the bus, and we had a gal taking calls, and she was lining it all up, and we were picking people up. And you would not what I learned from that was the demand is there. There is demand there for transit.
Right.
It's just like, I think
maybe it wasn't started out the correct way.
Maybe it came out of the gate swinging too hard, you know, and you punched yourself out
right away. Let's run 20 buses empty on the path.
Right.
Which that's probably not needed. That is not needed. A route is probably not needed in Norfolk. I think the more setting stuff up is probably a little bit more needed.
I think you just grow with it. I think you just take it slow.
Yep.
You know, learn from what you did, what just happened to you.
Yeah.
You don't hire somebody who's got gambling issues and wants to fly. You know, I mean, I don't know that I didn't know him that well, obviously, but it's just unfortunate. And the other thing I don't think you don't name it Norfolk Transit. We don't have anything to do with it. We donated some little bit of money. You know, you put some, but then it becomes like it's Norfolk's Transit.
Yeah, know? I think there was some confusion there for sure.
I always thought it was a city thing initially. Starting out.
They're their own entity. They have their own board. They receive their own funds. They're responsible for their own. Now, obviously, we now are calling for an audit.
Right.
You know, if we're going to donate, if we're going to use taxpayer dollars to help finance it, then we're going to call for an audit. It's an 80-20 match. So whatever if they 20% they do, they get 80% coming in for it. And I guess when they survey, they get it from I'm assuming it's federal money, but that comes in and that's how their budget's set up. So they have to raise 20% of their funds. Now, if I used to do the math, you're 80% coming in. But I think Norfolk's always had some sort of transit for years, right? And with this, like I said, they came out swinging and maybe got a little too big for what they needed to do. But now you're building from like the base up, so it's going to be. I think it'll be a solid deal for the community moving forward. I don't know what they do because when we were getting calls, we got a lot of calls from kids, not so much kids, but moms who can get their kids to school.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the one, and then a lot of it's elderly, not being able to get their doctor's appointments, you know? And so I had one gal call me, she was stuck, her car was stuck. So I went over and moved the snow for her. And she's like, I have to drive. I can't afford the $5 for transit to drive, and this was to get her meds. She goes, I haven't been I had a doctor's appointment. I had to miss it because I was stuck in my or not her driveway, but I was stuck at the place she was renting from. And so I just went and moved her snow for her. And it's such a, like we take it for granted. I think sometimes when we're able to get from A to B pretty easily.
Yeah, right.
And there's a lot of people in the community that can't.
Right.
And so it's a service I think we need, but we just need to make sure it's run.
Do you think
properly.
That's the way to do it still, or do you think there's another way it can be handled?
Well, I definitely don't want to come into this like being a city deal. And I like the fact that it's its own entity. You know, I think just one less thing the city's got its arms around it just is good. And then if they got the right people in place that are sitting there looking over the books, I mean, the guys that are looking over their books, they perform audits for a living.
Yeah, they're I think we're in a good spot now. I was told I think Baltus is taking care of it, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so they'll make sure things are looking good.
Yeah. Do you know if Uber and Lyft are allowed in Norfolk? Is there like a city ordinance against that at all? Do you know?
No, I don't know.
Okay, we've had a couple
weird that we don't
have too many of them. Like we have DoorDashers,
right? Yeah, I've seen that.
But delivering people, I don't know, delivering people, but taxing people doesn't seem to be a thing. You think it would be a big deal on like Friday, Saturday nights?
Oh yeah, definitely on a Friday, Saturday night.
You just don't see it. I just didn't know if there was a city ordinance against it or if they're.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think that'd be great.
We'll have to do some research on that.
Right.
This was kind of something you brought up to me, so we'll see. And I think you brought some stuff on this. You feel we have an aging demographic?
Well, I think what we have, if you like with the housing study. So if you look at our demographics, I think it's like 19% of it's over 65.
16, depending on what you're. This is back in 2021.
Where you see that?
Or 2020.
Age and
60%. Okay, so I pulled some numbers too myself and it was a little more than that 16%.
Okay,
but I think 54 and under was like almost 50. 54 and under was like 65% or something like that.
Okay.
So no, I don't think we have a real serious issue, but what I do think though is we have to retain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you figure and do the math, like so in Norfolk, we're kind of on the higher side for how many babies people are having.
That's what we were concerned about, the 5 and under.
The 7% is
the 7%.
Right.
That's the only number I had an issue with because I know, and like we've talked about with everybody else's, I don't see it anecdotally because it seems like there's a lot of people our age that live in Norfolk, are in Norfolk, couples that are in Norfolk. That's kind of where the way I look at it anecdotally. So it's hard to like, I can't argue that because that's just something I'm visually seeing. And that's why I didn't. And then we saw these numbers. I was a little bit surprised because I think we have a very diverse, demographic.
Right.
So I guess what's your concern then?
Okay. So just kind of what you're talking about. Then.
Okay. Because that was our biggest concern was they're not having as many babies to fill the
and that's a
void
national thing.
Yeah,
right?
that is
right
across the board.
Okay, so
Jinx.
if you look at 20 and under, or 20 and that's like almost 30%.
20 to what?
20 to 0. Like
20 to 0 is 30%.
Yeah. So then if you look at like 35 to like that 20, like 28%, and then if you look at 55 to 60, it's 23%, and then if we go 85 to 65, we're running around. Okay, so they're saying 60. I'm thinking it's 19, but I could be. You pull these numbers up.
You can find different numbers everywhere. That's why I had trouble. So I just went with the census.
So the only thing that I kind of gathered from this deal is if you look at when they break where people came, so 18% came in replaced. So 19% is the elderly.
Mm-hmm.
And, and we all know what happens when we get older.
Right.
Right. And then, so if that's got 18% coming in to replace, and now it's saying, and so out of that 18%, it was like 10% came from the state here, probably pretty close. 2% came in from outside the state, and 6%, I might be way off. I'm just,
you're good.
6% of the numbers or people came in from a different country. So what scares me a little bit is, so you might have some decent numbers coming in, but then what happens when, like we were talking earlier about how important it is
change that culture a little bit, the buy-in.
Well, for Norfolk, not just be thinking about Norfolk. Like we need to start working with the communities around Norfolk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not always Norfolk. It needs to be about Norfolk and the greater Northeast Nebraska, because those population base dwindle. If you're looking at that, 10% of the people are coming in from not very far away. Where do they go? They end up going away.
Yeah.
So it's very important that Battle Creek's thriving, Stanton's doing good, Wausau, Osmond. I mean, and those towns need to be doing good too. So I don't know what that means as far as like Madison County, as far as the commissioners, what they're looking at. But so my point is this: if you've got to focus on retention and what brings people back. So like when I told you guys I moved to Kearney for a while, it's because I had an awesome time at Kearney when I was in college.
It was a great city. Yeah.
And so I wanted to live there just because of my experience there.
I did as well.
Yeah. And so now I feel like with some of the stuff they're trying to do with Wayne State and the local college here, is they're trying to give people that experience in Norfolk, which I think once you have a great experience, then you're going to want to try to maybe live here. And so then I think our retention levels go up a little bit. So I think our college and our schools are helping with that.
Mm-hmm.
The career academy at Norfolk Public is a good investment in the school, because those kids, they're going out and they're getting jobs in my field. Right. And then, and then there's a big need for people in those fields around here. So if we can just do a good job of retention. So I know that for our current mayor, quality of life, he talks about quality of life. That's a big focus for him. And that's, I think, what it is. It's the focus on quality of life. So not only do you have good retention, but you recruit families here. So I guess when it comes to population, I think otherwise, I think we're pretty healthy. It's pretty healthy because we're talking, they're talking, and like we said, I don't know if we talked about it yet or not, but 2027, 2028, they're thinking maybe 27,000 people.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've always heard that 30,000 is that kind of that magic mark when all of a sudden you start bringing in different franchises.
It is 30, 35, I think is where they did, but 30 is kind of that marker.
So we can get like Panera bread?
Panera bread,
My, if we get one of those, my kids, my daughters would be so excited.
Right.
So I will say, so I lived in Grand Island and I lived in Hastings, and I came back not for quality. Well, I guess I came back to Battle Creek, and I've lived in Battle Creek and Norfolk and kind of all over, but it's the people in the area more than the quality or the the stuff to do or the funness or that's the way I've always looked at it. Is like I'm here for the people, the community, the safety, the buy-in regionally more than I liked, and I didn't like the attitude of the general populace in like Grand Island and Hastings.
Sure.
So that's the reason I like this area as a whole. The hub, it's just the people and the community and the buy-in, I guess, and the safety and
right. We have some outstanding people here. I mean, I think that's a different. Yeah, I totally agree with you. It is a good community.
That's my only. I argue that with some people, like when people say, "Well, we need more fun stuff." I get it. Maybe I'm just an old maybe I'm an old fuddy-duddy. Maybe I'm actually a 75-year-old man. I don't know. I have no idea.
You're not supposed to start getting grumpy until after like 50.
Get off my lawn.
I'm like getting there. I'm like 48, so I got like 2 years left until I'm just a jerk.
And then you're just going to be that guy.
Talking about the hub, though, we discussed the hub a lot. He calls them all bedroom communities to Norfolk.
Right.
Do you think in the back of your mind when you're making decisions for Norfolk, do you think about the surrounding communities, how it could affect them?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, you got to, because I mean that's a big. Where do people come from that do all their shopping here? What it would be? We're a big community. I mean, I know that we are Norfolk, but overall we're just a big community here, and I think that's maybe what you're.
That's kind of what I'm getting at, yeah.
And we got to look at it that way. Yeah. When I was talking about Woodland Park, that first meeting I was in about scared the Jesus out.
Yeah,
it was like we had two attorneys going at each other, and they were talking about. We're shutting this sewer off, and they're going to backflow. We're going to all the basins are going to flood there. I'm just going, what am I part of here? And so that's kind of where I got my, that's when Mayor Fuchman at the time kind of pulled me aside. We can get through this, Shane.
Right.
We just got to be reasonable about how we do it. We did get through it. It all worked out.
Right.
And we still talk about it to this day that there were still having issues with those people that have had issues, but they've come up with some good things for them. But I kind of heard you guys talk to Corey about the lift station, but yeah, that is something that's ongoing. But yeah, I'm telling you. I guess what I was getting at, my thought process then was, that's Woodland Park, man. Those people come here, and it's
basically Woodland Park is Norfolk,
right? But they're just their own SID. They're in their own community.
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, I just couldn't believe it. To me, it felt like, well, that's a part of Norfolk,
right? Yeah, it's interesting,
so, right?
How can Norfolk stay competitive with other communities, like let's say Columbus, for new business, innovation, public safety, and population size? We kind of touched on a lot of these, but
we're all competing,
right?
You don't think you're competing, you are competing. When businesses come here and when they're like a developer, they're not just visiting here; they're going there and there and there and there. So, but what we've done, I think, to separate ourselves a little bit, people are tired of hearing it. But when these people come in and they see what it's kind of like downtown, looks like it's like, oh, cool. So they're innovative. They're looking at about, they're trying to make their community better. And then I think the other thing that we need to do better is our partnership with our schools, especially a city partnership with our schools. I'm not sure. I can't really say it's not a good partnership, but it could be better.
Can you explain that?
Well, but when you think about somebody coming to your community, what's the first thing they're going to do?
Schools, park,
right? Yeah. They're going to look at your schools. They're going to look at your parks. What are we going to do? They're going to look at what could their family do when they're not at the school, or what kind of facilities do you have? And so when Columbus goes out and puts up that big facility, you better believe that when businesses come to town and looking for things, you're looking at that. So you just have to remain competitive. And I think if we can form alliances and partnerships,
did Columbus they start that after the Wise deal?
Yeah.
Because they saw the Wise deal and they thought, we're going to do a little bit better.
Well, our Wise, I think what the Y did was great.
It's great. But because I looked at it,
almost like a one-up.
It looks like a one-up to the.
I think that there's a big there was a big partnership in that one, and I don't know, we won't go into it, but
no, we don't have to.
Yeah, I think they had the backing behind it was huge.
Yeah, well,
we
can just say what's right.
I've never been there.
Let's just put it that way.
I've just seen the pictures on Facebook, and
there's a big building next to it that had a lot to do with it.
Right. Let's put it that way. Here we go. We don't have to get into the weeds.
No.
But no, I think those partnerships are big for your community to grow and move forward, because like everybody, if A, B, and C don't line up, I mean, you're just not gonna work out for you.
Right. Do you think you have, and this is a kind of a harder question, and I'll try to explain it as good as I can. Do you think you have the ability to bridge the gap between businesses, community organizations, and residents to serve the needs of all?
Yeah, definitely. I think that just the level of I've been talking all night about communication, and that's the key with anything is communication, and be able to listen to people and make people feel. I shouldn't say when you say make them feel like you're listening. You generally are listening, and they buy into that. Like this guy is listening to what I have to say, and I think that's what we have to do. Is just if we can communicate better, find what the business needs are, and I have a pretty good handle at a little bit because I do have my own business,
right?
What business needs are, and then what your citizens' needs are, and what they're looking for, and how you can merge those things together. Because obviously, your businesses aren't doing good if the citizens aren't doing good, because they don't live here, and those are the people that work there.
Right.
And if they're not happy with their housing, they're not happy with the roads. I mean, it all ties together.
Big cycle.
So you just got to make sure that you listen. Like I've been talking a lot tonight, but you just got to listen more.
Yeah.
I think.
And the next question you've already kind of touched on, I'm going to ask it anyway, but transparency and accountability are very important. What steps would you take to make sure the public is informed? You've said this a bunch of times. But
Right. Well, I'll start off with that budget I was talking about. I think that's by far that's huge, because that's just facts. That's just not blowing smoke. That's saying, okay, we're going to do this and this is what we're going to change. The other thing I think we can do, and this is another thing that's kind of beyond what we've ever done. So Norfolk has what you call a weak mayor system form of government, and like Lincoln, Omaha, it's a strong mayor form of government. Then you have like an executive form of government. So Kearney, for instance, they voted in a city administration manager, essentially. So he pretty much runs the community. Then you have your mayor who gets elected, and he votes with the council, and is more of like or she votes with the council, and they're more of like a dignitary. They'll
like a figurehead type thing.
It just kind of like, they're going to go talk with you, but they're not. There's not much there that they can do. Now, when you go to Lincoln, Omaha, your mayor is they're like the executive director of everything.
Yep.
They're in charge of everything.
They're almost a little bit too far.
Right. So you come to Norfolk, and what Norfolk is, it's with the form of government we have. And I think this part's checks and balances. I'm just talking checks and balances here. So the mayor can veto any ordinance. I didn't know that till just recently, because I've never seen a ordinance veto, but they have the power to do that. And then the council can overturn that by three-quarters majority. To me, that is that's checks and balances.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to appointments, when the mayor is elected, they make the appointments for administrator, attorney, engineer, clerk, and who am I missing there? There's 5 of them. Oh, finance director. Okay. They make those appointments, right? And so in my opinion, and this is just me from sitting on the council side of things, has nothing to do with the mayors I've been with, I've been or served with,
right.
But from my opinion, I feel like the staff works for the person who's going to appoint you to that position, right? And so it's like, you can feel the frustration come out of it, because not being the president of the council, I hear this. So I can see some frustration coming from guys like, I can't get done. This is the direction I want to go. But in all fairness, so when you elect a mayor, that agenda, what they went out and told people they're going to do, that's what they're doing. They're not doing anything wrong. They're forcing that. But then staff is directly working with them. I'm not saying in fear of their jobs, but that's your boss. There's no other,
Right.
And then, so I feel a lot of times that if I go and go, hey man, Clearview, that road is rough. There's some, I don't, you might not get the feedback you want because it just doesn't fit. Or if I say, I don't want this going in this direction, I think we should do this. I don't think we should do a $70 million bond initiative, right? It's like, well, we're still doing it and so what I think we could do differently, and I don't know if we can, but this is what I will work on. I think Papillion is doing something similar to this. So what they'll do is then the only way you can't make an appointment, you have to have 2/3 vote. It's that simple. And then
I just think it makes sense.
Then you've got checks and balances all the way through. The mayor still makes the.
Well, it's like you're wanting to bring into like a presidential cabinet he appoints somebody and then they have to be approved.
Essentially the same thing.
That's what you're looking
at. Yeah. Or if you don't want them, I mean, the same sort of, if you're not going to reappoint them and if you run another term, same difference. You just don't appoint that person, but they have to approve that. I think that would be a good way to
approve appointments and unappointments.
Right. Well, yes, correct. Yeah. So if I changed, basically it start with an unappointment. It's basically going to be more of an unappointment.
Okay. I look at it the other way. I think it would be really good that every term you have to be reappointed and approved.
You do have to be approved.
So
100%. That's true. Yes.
So I don't think just because you were there the first year.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Okay.
We are saying
you're reappointed. So like you're not saying they have to approve you not appointing that person. Say that this person was in your last term. You thought this person did a lot bad job for you. You got reelected to another term and you're choosing to appoint somebody else. That's not really, they don't have to approve you not appointing this person. They have to approve appointing this person.
Well, they first have to approve the fact that you didn't appoint them back.
See, I don't like that.
You got to do something because otherwise you have the power just to fire and there's no say. So the person, if you're in the middle of a term, yes, but I'm saying at the end of like in between terms. Yeah. In between terms is the tricky part. That's why we're having this conversation because I don't know exactly how that works in between terms.
Gotcha. I get it in term.
Right.
Yes. You'd need approval to fire somebody.
In between terms,
that's what you're like in the middle of your term.
But what I'm talking about right now is I don't know if you can even do it. This is something I'm going to.
Right.
It's something.
Does it have to be voted on by the citizens to change that?
It might be. Yeah. But I think
because it could be in your bylaws or something.
Right. And the best thing about it to me though, and it has. I'm not like I said. I'm not trying to anybody like a mayor.
Right.
But
ideas,
just from the city council point of perspective. I think it would just feel more like we have more cohesiveness amongst ourselves, which then leads to more community, I think, involvement because now you've got 8 people that are hearing what's going on and they're hearing citizens say, this is the direction I want to go. And I think overall it'll be beneficial for the community. And I think it'll also allow the people that you hire to perform better, in their role as a city administrator or city engineer, they know that, that they're going to have this. Do well. Yeah, you're going to do well, but you're also working for the group.
Right.
And I think that that was one of my, I think that'll help with some of the stuff you were asking about. I think it's just going to help with the direction. Because if you look at things now, if you're in the council, you get your packet on Thursday, you're voting on Monday. You're not part of the agenda meeting. You're not part of any of that. And so, that frustrations with that doesn't resonate well with everybody. You want to be able to have input.
You guys should have already talked about that way ahead of time. Or you know what I mean?
You can't in the scheme of things really because you can't really talk about things until they're in front of you, right? Because that's just the way it works for elected authority. But what I'm getting at is the fact that the agenda, that how we're moving, if you had a voice there, and just because of the way things are structured, the voice would be then council, mayor, agenda driven, where I feel like if we don't do something like that, you're either a staff driven community or you're a mayor driven community. And I can tell you, I've been part of, that's in my opinion, you get some things done, but when you're just strictly you don't have the whole narrative of what everybody wants to do. And so I think if you could do either one and have it both council, we're all working together. But I think then it's just like we were talking about earlier, you've got a group of people working on what narrative we want to go and what direction we want to go and how these things work and I think it would be better for the community long term.
Yeah, I could see that. I have a thought I was thinking while you were talking and listening, but if you weren't able to change the way you did it, maybe a way to exert your power as a city council is you control the purse strings. You could hold people accountable by your budgets. We can't. Right. We're not doing it this time. Like I'm not saying that's a harsh way to do it, but that is a way to create control.
Well, the way the budget's created now, it's tough. I mean,
you just can't do it.
You can and can't. Okay, so you can. That's why I keep talking about the zero balance budget.
Because then you could give you a little more power to do something.
I feel like it's going to be a lot easier. It's going to be. You're just going to have more say in what's going on. I don't know how department like it, what they're going to think, but it's and like I told you, both these things I'm talking about, I'm not going to just stop if I don't get a bear.
Yeah,
these are things that I'm going to push for just being council president.
Right.
So
interesting stuff. I mean, it's very interesting. I was just trying to. I had a follow-up question and I lost it.
That's because I interrupted you.
No, you didn't interrupt me. I knew you were going to speak. I was letting you speak, and then I just kind of lost it. Do you feel that Norfolk is heading in the right direction, and where do you see the city in 5 to 10 years?
I do. I think we're heading in the right direction. I think what we talked about with the budget and what I just got done talking about with the mayor, I think that's a good thing to help us move forward. I feel like we just need a good way of reaching out to the community so the community feels like we're listening better. I think that's one thing we can work on. But as far as I see Norfolk in 5 to 10 years, I think that's very important when you're an elected official, that you're not just looking at tomorrow, you're looking at what's going to happen, what that's going to look 5 to 10 years down the road. And I feel like, 10 years down the road, we could be, if we keep doing what we're doing, I think, and keep things moving in the right direction, keep Norfolk open for business. That statement. And the reason you keep hearing it is because that's how your community dies. As soon as the community goes, hey, we're closed, stop. We're not doing this. We're not even going to entertain that idea. I don't want to hear about that. As soon as those attitudes start, you just guaranteed your community to really not move much. And you go back and look at those population charts and see how much movement we did between 2010. Wasn't much.
It wasn't much. And then it was a big jump in a year.
700 people in 10 years, and then 2 years, it was a 2,000 or?
Well, some of that's the annexation.
Yeah.
I don't want to bring that.
We can still count.
Yeah, I had to.
That's a little touchy.
That's staying on that one. So
yeah,
that's a touchy subject there.
Yeah, it is. I shouldn't even said it.
Super touchy subject.
You're lucky we were at the end of the hard questions, I guess. We're gonna. Those are the end of our questions that we had come up with for you guys. We are going to move on to our listener questions.
Right.
These are pulled straight from the listeners. They're worded the exact same way they gave them to us. So just wanted to preface with that. What do you see as the greatest need for Norfolk?
Right. So you've got two forms of thought there. You've either got the police station or the roads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you've also got to look into the fact that we also have to keep this thing moving. So our budget works out when your 40% of your budget is retail sales. You got to think, okay, so what are we doing to make sure that we sustain this budget and we don't, like you guys were talking, we don't want to put any more burden on property tax.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we do that? So you've got to like mingle all those three together. But those are the things that keep Norfolk alive and moving forward. And I suppose in the next 5 years, that's the big deal. Police station, roads. And then whatever community-driven project comes up, that's probably what's going to present itself. Maybe it's Hazuka, maybe it's an indoor water. I don't know. I don't even want to say it because people go, oh my God, you're crazy.
Stop putting ideas in people's minds.
We got to make the citizens communicate. That's the whole point of this whole thing, is getting them to communicate without,
right.
In an echo chamber type of thing.
Yep.
Are we missing the mark when it comes to caring for citizens?
Well, I kind of worry a little bit about like what I experienced with some of the elderly population that doesn't have transportation. And we did some property management. We managed Oddfellow Manor, and so you see some of these people that don't have means. That part's getting a little bit. Then I also I think daycare in a way. I feel like daycare is really. I didn't know that you guys did, but I think we need to do a better job of communicating with. Because as a guy, and I don't mean to be, but I never really
thought about it.
Yeah. My wife just took care of it.
Yeah.
And you're like, what do you mean we don't have? It's bad. It's that way because that burden gets placed on a lot of women.
Yep.
But it keeps people out of the workforce, or it keeps them. It is something that needs to be looked at. I don't know what that direction that goes. I mean, you probably got better advice on that because of what you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult situation. The state makes it difficult sometimes, so I don't want to blame them too much, but it's true. It makes it difficult for the
smaller in-homes.
The smaller in-homes, and you can't, we can't really. It's difficult for us to go and expand into a big facility,
right?
Not saying we couldn't figure out the means for it, but then it gets into more regulation and more. I'd rather go buy 10 houses and run 10 in-homes than go buy a big facility. But that's a whole nother podcast.
We are actually going to have
We are going to have a daycare panel podcast
on.
Right.
and have a bunch of different daycares on, and that'll be interesting because they'll have a lot more insight than me.
So the guys are going to learn.
Yeah,
so we're going to bring the experts in.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's a difficult thing. Daycare is a big problem, and it's starting to get handled, but it's also not getting handled too.
Well, I feel like it's because we do need to get more women in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You look at our council, it's all guys.
Yeah,
and I think because of that, sometimes that stuff gets overlooked. It's not something that's we just need to. So we just need, like I said, we need to listen better and find out. But I think that's important, and obviously, we talked about roads, we talked about the police station. So I guess we kind of touched on all of it, everything else.
those are all. I would say those are the hot button topics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We talked about this a little bit, but this is another question from a listener. Apartment needs were a big push for Norfolk, but the cost for rent for a 600 square foot apartment is $1,100. Do you see a way to fix the housing problem?
I've been trying to figure this one out. I almost feel like if there was a way, and I don't know where this comes from, but if you could start working on some of the properties that were older and update them to properties that are, paint, carpet, and invest money, find a way to those properties could be reinvested in. I don't know what you're talking about TIF, but that micro TIF is kind of. But that if you could do some of that, I think you could find a way to start. Because new construction is not going to change. Those guys are going to charge that for a new apartment. That's just what it's going to be. Yeah. So the only way I can think of, and there's a need for it out there, if you could find a way to do that and upgrade existing, and
would some of those run into code problems at all? If you started breaking some of that back and tearing out some of that stuff, would there be some issues that would arise?
Yeah, right. If you some of your split foyer ones would, yeah. Because especially when you got more than 4, then you got to have at least one that's meeting ADA, and so yeah, there's some yeah, right. That's a good point.
End up with a more money situation than even trying to build a new one. You know what I mean? It's a tough issue.
The one thing about remodels and stuff, if somebody does do that, you're paying. It's cheaper you on the tax end than demolishing and rebuilding.
Correct.
Like if you just remodel, like you basically are tearing the whole thing down, but it's still the same.
Yeah, I was just more thinking
you keep the structure there.
Yeah,
if you came across asbestos or lead or things that would cost a lot of money to pull out. Yeah, that's probably why some of that's not being done to some of those older buildings. But
yeah, that's exactly why. That's why they have that micro TIF.
Mm-hmm.
But like I told you earlier, most of that stuff's not in a blighted substandard area, so you couldn't really do it anyway. So. But it's something that's going to be addressed. So when that question you had about is Norfolk doing good for everybody, and that is probably another area that needs to be focused on, because when you're living in an apartment paying $1,100 a month and your income's this and you can afford $650, what are you doing? I mean, you're eating bologna. You're just getting by.
You're not even treading water.
Credit cards.
It's in your, yeah, right.
Difficult. What kind of community involvement can we expect from you as a mayoral candidate?
Well, so I guess I just go off my past. When I was talking earlier, I was part of the chamber out in Sydney, president, and then I was a volunteer firefighter out there, and then moved here and was in the chamber. I'm a football coach. I coach junior high football. So, for as far as community involvement goes, that's important to me. You can't just live in I feel like you had to provide some sort of form of service, and growing up, my grandpas were both World War II vets, and now I don't want to compare what a mayor or a city council is to a veteran. Well, I don't. Are you sure you don't want to? I don't want. That's not where we're going out there. Okay. All I was saying, because that's like,
easy on the calls, guys.
That's like a snidbit. So I go, what did you say?
Right?
No, because it's not even close with the sacrifice your veterans that have made.
Right.
But all I'm saying is that the people that were veterans, they were willing to serve, and that's what they did. And so when you come to a community, you need to be willing to serve your community. And obviously you're not going to go out and fight a war like those, but you could get involved in like city government, get involved in the chamber, get involved in the Lions, get involved in whatever it is, but it can become something that's important, and you can do good that way. So
I like that idea. So I kind of want to keep going on this subject, because that's the best answer we've had to that one so far. I've noticed a lot less buy-in from people on that. How do we get more people to do something like that? Like,
you got to change the way
people think.
No, you got to change the way it's done. Like, so I've obviously I've worked with I've done stuff with the Odd Fellows, and I've seen with the Lions. but it's not attractive what they're doing to the younger generation. It's just not. Even like my generation, they're not going to it. It used to be like that was the way you got away and did your thing and went and hung out.
Yeah, my grandpa was on the Lions Club.
It was networking. It was
yeah. And so, I mean, all those things were like the Knights of Columbus, and they were started to help families, obviously, because back then the average life of a male wasn't that long. If he passed away, at least he knew his wife was being taken care of and kids, and that's how the Knights of Columbus came about. That's where the Oddfellows came along. It was about your family, yeah. So times have changed so much, but I think they've got to modernize the way they're run and what they do.
Do we have to do that, or do we have to change culturally? Because I grew up, and we talk about it a lot on a lot of our other podcasts. Is like like volunteering and service. Selfishly, it's a good feeling. If people do it, you feel good. You feel good when you do stuff. And I think a lot of people think that the only way they can help stuff is if they have to spend money, and you don't have to. I mean, time is just as valuable. I mean, just a little bit of help. I joke around. My mom told me to do a lot of stuff my whole life growing up, tons of times, but I think I'm better for it. And I think it's made me a better person. And I think more people would enjoy it and find the benefits themselves while helping somebody else. And that's why, like, I get it. I understand that, like, some people, because we talked about it on Anita about Relay for Life is kind of, it's that generation is kind of going away. People don't do that anymore. Yeah. And I see what you're saying is, and I noticed it on the Lions Club. A lot of these other things are not the same they were that I grew up revering, as a child, because I saw the older generation doing that type of stuff. You got me thinking now.
Well, it's kind of like the senior center right now. They don't have the membership they had, and I don't think it has anything to do with the senior center. I think it just has the fact that it's called the senior center. Like a lot of people now, like in their 50 or
55, in their 50s, the 48-year-olds out there, 48-year-olds kid.
No, but if you're talking about like in their late 60s, early 70s, they don't see themselves as seniors,
right?
So if they had a different name, like I think it would attract people to it. And the senior center is a great program. I don't know if you guys have ever been in there.
I've never been in there.
Go check it out.
I volunteered. It's been a while, but yeah,
it is an awesome program they provide there. And once people go there, and it's like, oh, this is fun. I enjoy this. But I just feel like I think some of this stuff is because it was your parents' thing. It was your grandpa's deal or your grandma's deal that maybe you don't. Yeah, that's not cool. Gotcha. So if they just change the way it's looked at, maybe a little bit, I think you get more people to it. But it's going to be tough because, man, now it's all you people get home, TV comes on, social medias, and they got their phone and their TV on, and or if you're a gamer, you're into that. So fortunately for me, I have a hard time sitting still. So I got to find something to do. Yeah. So
interesting. I do like that concept though, because it is going away. So we should talk about that. But I'm going to kind of group these next two questions together. I think is the best way to do this one. Are you open to actively showing support to all diverse groups in the community? And what support will you provide in regards to minorities in the community to make them feel represented?
Well, I would hope they would feel. I mean, that's important for every community. If people feel like they're part of your community, otherwise, why would they want to be part of it?
Right.
So I just think you've got to be open, like just open to discussion and make sure they feel comfortable. If somebody doesn't feel comfortable, come on,
communicate it.
Yeah, communicate it. But I think that's very important. The thing you just got to be careful when you don't want to push anybody's narrative in any direction, especially in city government. I don't want to push my narrative in a direction I don't. So I think sometimes that would be, but I would say everybody should be represented equally in city government. It's important that's just, you can't function as a city if you're not going to be that way.
Right.
So I don't know. They do have, I mean, I even hate saying we, you know what I mean? It should all just be we.
That's how we see it.
Yeah. I hate saying they, it's we all need to work together as a community so we all feel comfortable.
Right.
I think that's what's important.
I like that answer. It's been one of the tougher questions that we've had to ask. So it's a good one, but it's been a tougher one.
It's unfortunate people don't feel welcome. That isn't right.
Right.
You live here, you should feel welcome to your community.
Right. That's all the listener questions. Now we're going to get into some more political questions about more federal government levels. We asked these to all of our touching base people.
All right.
How do you feel about where the state of our country is right now, and do you feel that we are being well represented at the federal and state levels?
Well, let's start with what you asked first. That's where is our country going? Where is it at? I'm not very positive about it. I see a president that is incoherent. I mean, you see it, and that's unfortunate. But who's running the country if he's not? If his wits aren't about him, that freaks me out a little bit. And then I don't like the way corporate America has all of a sudden kind of hijacked our government. You look at BlackRock and Vanguard, and God, even us talking on this podcast, we get shot going home tonight talking about. Is there a
little scared having the window?
But I mean, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, so if you think you're getting shot on this one, don't
come on the other podcast. Then. Yeah.
The other one, I've already got the target.
But you guys know where I'm going with this.
100%.
What does that all mean?
Right.
What does that mean for moving forward?
That's government corporate partnership. I mean, Vanguard and BlackRock are like BlackRock. I think owns like the amount of money underneath them is higher than the GDP of like 43
$30 trillion assets under management. That's what
it's insane.
It's insane.
And that's a lot of power. That's a lot of power.
They're dictating how those companies are ran.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy. And then
not just those companies, they're dictating how the countries ran.
Yeah.
Multiple countries.
What all trickles down.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, because campaign financing, all that good stuff that goes in. What are these guys, what's going on behind closed doors with your representatives? I don't know. It's just we live in a scary time.
How do you feel we fix that?
I don't know. That's why I'm at a city level.
I'm just going to stay here. Honestly, that's how you start. You got to start here.
That's the best thing about local government. We can sit and have these talks like this, and things can change. Things can change rapidly. But when you look at the federal level, I don't know, but maybe not so much at the state level, but on the federal level, I don't know what changes.
Yeah.
Unless
it takes a good, like you said, boots on the ground, a community-driven effort, and we can start that at a local level. Build it up. You get a whole bunch of people in the community. You get a large buy-in in your community, and turn that large buy-in in a large buy-in in a town. Turn that large buy-in in the town into a large buy-in in the county. Large buy-in in the county into the large buy-in to the state, and then you get a whole bunch of states with a bunch of buy-in. Then you can maybe change it, but it's got to start somewhere.
That takes time.
What scares me though is what direction are we going with these wars that are happening right now, and what's that mean? Where are we going with that? What's that mean for our kids?
Right.
And like what militaries now? What they say their recruitment efforts are down. What was it?
Like it's a lot.
Well, they did that to themselves.
Like 20% or something crazy.
I think the younger generation is realizing I'm not going in there to do. I mean, you guys have turned it into a clown show.
Well, that's the draft.
Not all of them, but
and there's the draft. I mean,
that's an issue.
So
good news is I'm old enough I won't be drafted.
I got two boys though.
I got two boys as well.
You're right in the middle.
Yeah.
But it's tough when the country you love and want to fight for is in the disarray that it's in.
Right.
Yep.
It's difficult.
But you sometimes you think though, like the majority of the country still thinks the same.
Mm-hmm.
We all want the same things. We want to wake up in the morning. We want to go to work. We want to drive home and
be left alone.
Yeah.
I'll leave you alone. Right. You leave me alone, and then we're going to come together on Sunday.
But I'm telling you, man, the social media and the logarithms they put into your phone, like if I read one article, I like to read all the different news sources just to keep myself.
We do the same thing.
I don't like just to read one, so I'll go through and read all the different news sources but you read one article, all of a sudden pop. You start getting articles, even on the other news sources. It's all so they know what's going to get you, push your buttons.
Right.
And so offset. I remember when my dad was still alive. I'd come back. He had a garage out behind his house, and it's kind of cool. He had it fixed up and stuff. He'd be back there, and I'd come back and visit him, and he would have Fox News on. I'm nothing wrong with Fox News, but Fox News was firing him up. You come in there, and he's like, "Oh, the country's going here." Like, Dad, let's just step back and think for a minute. It's maybe not as bad as you think.
Right.
But
maybe it was.
Yeah, maybe it was.
Maybe it was.
Maybe he was onto something.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe we should have listened to him.
But he would get. I mean, it was. I get it though. I get it. I get where he was coming from. He would always tell me, man, these cell phones, man, they're the end. They're the end.
They're bad.
What they're going to do for kids and attention spans. He was all onto that back when he only had a flip phone. He passed away in 2015. So yeah, he had a flip phone, and we would talk about stuff like that.
Jeez.
Well, I mean, think about it. You can literally be in the beach of Hawaii, and somebody can be on the top of a mountain if there's service, and you can FaceTime instantaneously. Like instantaneously. Like people take that for granted.
I used to have to. I had a flip phone. We have to text. Do you remember when you text?
Yes, we had that too.
Then I remember when the Weather Channel. You could pull up the Weather Channel on your phone. You're like, have you seen this?
Whoa.
I got the radar on here. And then when we get after that, they went to, what was it? It was the
it like started with the Blackberries and then went to the iPhones and the Androids.
Yeah. Right. Interesting stuff.
But like if you look at what's happening in schools too, with these kids, that especially with COVID, they got locked out of school for so long, and then
that's a whole nother story. That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, but it's the
scary.
What's that mean? That's those students are going to be out in the that's your next workforce out there, and so it is scary that I think we just need to have some common sense. If we could just get back to common sense
and critical thinking,
practical.
Yeah.
Practical about things. I mean, there's so many things that you see the federal government doing that is not practical.
Right.
And it's not sustainable.
Right.
And so
what makes you, when that happens, it makes me wonder if it's by design or they're stupid. And I can't decide which one it is. They choose to do it or they're dumb.
I don't know. You guys have probably
which one's worse, them being dumb or them being evil?
Why not create chaos amongst the masses so you can get things done on your own?
Yeah.
Right. So you distract them from what really is important.
Yeah.
And that's what we think is going on.
Well, it's got to be.
Because people don't, and even more than common sense. And I used to think that was where I was. I was like, there's no common sense. And then I realized, like he just said, it's critical thinking.
Right.
It's being able to think for yourself. Like I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and you can listen to me, and then you can think about what I said. I'm not right on everything. I'm wrong a lot of times. I know I am, but I'm going to critically think about what I hear. Right. I don't care who tells me. I'm going to think about it. Like whoa, that doesn't sound right. At least do a little research and then make a decision.
Yeah, no, I agree. Doing your own research and educating yourself is important.
But it's hard to do that now because you got to know where to do it at times.
You do have to know what sources you to go to. Yeah. Right. And in this
and take multiple pieces of information and put it together.
One piece of advice that my dad would talk to me about, and I wanted to work this into this podcast somewhere, but I'll work it in now because it kind of makes sense. He would say, you can learn something new every day if you want to.
Yeah.
The day you stop learning something new, that day is the day you need to quit what you're doing because you're worthless to everybody. You're not worth. So, and then it moves right along into, we all think we're useful, but none of us are irreplaceable.
Yep.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So
I like that one a lot. We kind of talk along those lines,
right?
All the time.
But that's what happens when you stop learning.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
You join into what the chaos is going on. You buy into it.
Yep.
It's not really I don't know. It's just, it's unfortunate. I hope to gosh we can get it figured out. But I think sometimes you think it's going to take some sort of horrible act, to bring people back together. Mm-hmm. That's not what you want to see.
I don't want to see that.
Yeah, that's what we're moving towards.
Right.
And we talk about that all the time too.
But then are we moving towards that on purpose? See, you could just go deeper. And
we could go on rounds the whole time.
Right.
We'll bring you.
Don't get me started. You can come on the other podcast.
We'll bring you on the other podcast for that after the election's
over. We
over.
keep this one kind of just.
There's a wormhole. There's a hole there. You go into. You won't put that out. Yeah. So.
Do you feel that the systems that are in place still work in today's time? The two-party system.
That's something you almost have to start to question a little bit because you feel like the two parties are now fractured into two parties themselves.
He calls it the uniparty. They're all together is what it is. Yeah. They're just all rubbing each other's back.
Yeah, I can see that.
You have a few on the fringes, like what you're saying is you got two parties. Well, I'll just use the GOP, the conservative movement. There's the establishment conservatives, and then the new wave. We call them MAGA Republicans, but it's not even just MAGA. It's more of a what's the term? Populist movement in the conservative party. The more of a let's leave us alone, let us be, and then we're just having the establishment GOP making deals with establishment Dems in a back room without anybody knowing about it. Nobody voted for this, but you guys are just going to do this. I hate that.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself going in the future? Are you enjoying where you are? Do you see yourself staying in Northeast Nebraska?
Yeah, that's what I'm.
I figured.
No, yeah, I see. Like we were talking earlier, this community is awesome. I mean, it's got great people around here. I like what Norfolk has to offer. I like what it had to offer my kids. I hope my kids want to come back here. I mean, my 2 boys are in college right now, and I hope they want to come back here someday and have their own families here. And that's what I'm working for. I mean, I always feel like, when you want to leave someplace better than when you got it, right?
Yep.
And so here we are. We're all living in Norfolk now. This thing was established, what, 1865? Is that
something like that? Yeah.
Yeah. So you think about all the people that came here and worked and built and struggled and did all that just so you could be enjoying what we have today. And so you don't want to ruin that.
Right.
You want to leave it better than what you had it. So that's my ultimate goal, is try to leave things better than what we had it here. And then the next generation can take from there. So,
right. We want to give you 2 minutes uninterrupted to give whatever thoughts you want to the listeners. So whatever thoughts you want to give out there.
Nobody's hit 2 minutes yet. So
Nobody's hit 2 minutes yet. So that's your goal.
That's my goal.
Yep.
Well, I think it's just important that as a community, we make sure to make it a point, a really valid point, that we work together. We don't want to get divided in our community like our nation seems to be divided. Because look at how that's happening. Look what's going on there. And so if we can work together as a community, a lot of positive things can happen. And what are those aspects of your community that you need to look at working at? You've got your churches, you've got your schools, you've got our colleges, you've got your citizens, and even those organizations we were talking about that aren't as popular as they used to be. You get everybody working together and moving in the right direction. I feel like that's how communities last, and that's how communities move forward. And when we, like right now, I feel like we kind of have like this, there's a little bit of a bitterness, and not so much bitterness, but like mistrust. And a lot of mistrust got pointed right now at city government. And I get it. I'd probably, if I wasn't on the council, I'd be right there with them. I get it, that, and it all started with that bond initiative, and it just looked like we were being irresponsible with tax dollar money. And I get it, but the public spoke on that also. They turned it down, and they turned it down unanimously, basically. And so what's that tell you? When you're in like an office like that, it tells you what the Norfolk wants. So in a way, am I feeling that, I went out there and got voted, and we lost some ground with that. But the same side of it, you got to see what the public wanted. And that's not what they wanted. You found out what was important, like streets, police station.
Yeah.
I think maybe Tahoe maybe a little bit, but then obviously the Aqua Center wasn't. So
right.
It's just so important that we keep lines of communication open. And if you guys ever have suggestions about stuff, I mean, you talk to people all the time. You're on this podcast. That's something I would bring into what levels. How do we get levels of communication set up where we have it more streamlined between what people actually want to see and what's happening? Because that would be so beneficial for elected officials. Because sometimes you feel like you're out on their island, and it gets kind of lonely. And then all of a sudden you get an attaboy. Thanks for doing that. And it's like, oh, we are doing some things there that people like. But I think that level of communication is really important. I don't know.
We hope that this podcast could bring eventually a point where we could be a in between. The listeners give us some
heard.
suggestions, get their voices heard, and we bring it to you, to you guys in some way, shape, or form. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, what's nice about these podcasts too, and when people actually get to know the person. Mm-hmm. It's not a snidbit or a little tiny, he said this or what. They listen to the whole thing. They kind of get a feeling of who the person is.
That's why we really like this.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody's going to be disingenuous on an answer, right, usually we're going to have another question similar, and they're going to have to answer kind of the same way, or people are going to pick up on that. And that's why these long forms are really interesting, because you, like you said, you get the gist of the way the person really is, as opposed to a canned answer. And that's kind of why we just didn't want any canned answers.
Right.
And we thought this year these were going to be very important.
Well, I definitely agree. Like we were talking earlier, you stated it's really important that you have people run in every election. And that's what this gives you. You guys are providing an opportunity for candidates to come out and like get their message out there. Even if it's, it's hard. It is kind of hard to sit here and try to, narrow down what your message is, because we're talking about all the different things.
Yep.
But I think overall, you kind of get a kind of picture painted for you about what direction this guy's going to want to go.
And it makes everybody look human.
Right.
I mean, that's better than we're not demonizing anybody, and everybody gets to see we're all kind of the same.
Right.
We have different ideas. We're all the same people.
Right.
Very interesting. But we really appreciate you making time to be here today.
We get to 2?
Yes, you were yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I waited to interrupt or say anything until the 2. So you got there.
They'd be mad at me at the city council meeting.
No, you got it.
You got 2 minutes to talk.
You probably went about 2:30 on that one, or maybe even 3. I didn't have the timer out to do it.
Yeah, they should have said, hey, here's your yellow card, man.
Yeah,
You're done.
you definitely went. But we really appreciate you making time to be here today and give us and the community your thoughts. We think it's very important, like we just said.
Right.
And I'm glad you see it as an important thing too.
Thanks for doing it. Thanks for doing this. This is big. Thank you very much.
It's a cool thing. I think it's gonna be a good thing for everybody. All the candidates and the ones that decide to come on anyway.
If I run into the guys who don't want to, I'm going to talk to them about them. Say, dude, it's not scary.
We're not out to get anybody.
Yeah, you go and put your message out there, and you get to talk, and because it's funny because everybody running, they're good people. You might disagree a little bit, but I've had conversations with everyone. They're all great guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Not one guy that I would say, oh, they're all good people, and so it's just maybe you might see things just a little bit different. In fact, you're probably more same than you think. Yeah. That's what you guys will find out. You're gonna get people on here and be like, "Oh, yeah, they're all about the same person." You know, maybe
that's why I just don't want anybody to be afraid of us.
Yeah, we don't want to.
We're not out to get anybody.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We're just trying to get everybody's views out there in long form. But I get sometimes the interviews can be, you see them on TV and like, oh, they're trying to get them to say something and they're gonna clip it and it's whatever. But
right.
It is what it is. We're not gonna do that. We're not there for that.
Appreciate it.
We don't have enough listeners for that yet.
Well, even if we did, we still wouldn't do it that way.
No, I know.
We don't have enough listeners for that.
No, I think you guys do a great job because like you listen to some of the podcasts, some of the most interesting podcasts are when the guys running the podcast, they're asking really good questions. And they're taking the conversation where they want it to go, but they're doing it in a way that they're getting a lot of information out. Yeah. And that you guys do a great job.
Well, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We worked really hard on these questions, so I know some people might think they're not that in depth, but we try to keep it.
No, they're tremendously in depth because when you ask, there's a lot to the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were saying,
it's open. We left it open ended.
Very open.
You can catch somebody pretty quick.
Yeah,
but that's not our goal.
That's not
our goal.
Yeah, but you do you got to come in here knowing that.
Yeah, you kind of got to know the things that are going to be talked about.
Yeah, right.
And now, like we said, Corey's already out, so I mean. We asked the same questions.
Corey had the toughest one.
Yeah, Corey had the hardest one because he didn't know the questions.
The ability to listen to him
first. He's a good guy. I think he's just down to earth.
Yeah, so, it was all good.
Right.
But again, big thanks for you being here.
No problem.
We really appreciate it. Big thanks to Ryan Battershaw producing the show, co-host Vance Ryne, and we will see you guys all next week.